competition for the VESL Fortnite Regionals. I'm Vaudable, and joining me for this last and fateful day is Zephyr. How you feeling, man? After 3 days of stiff competition, only one remains.
I'll tell you what, it's been some of the best Fortnite that I think between the two of us, have had the opportunity to cover in a long time, all across the state of North Carolina, getting to see some of the best performers across so many high schools, and it's still not over, Vaude. We still have one final region to get through to send 4 more teams to those state finals.
That is right, Zephyr. We have the Southern region here in front of us. But before we talk about that, we did have some corrections in placements from the Western Regional yesterday. We talked about Virtual Academy. They were the most consistent team we ever saw. Well, they were actually the #1 placing team because Cyber Academy didn't play in that first round. So we had a bit of a correction there. So now that you all know, still the same at top 4 that we had. North Cabarrus also were able to make it in as well themselves for 3rd place, and Research Triangle in that 4th place with the tiebreakers. So still the same teams, just a little bit of a different arrangement there, so that you all know actually the Virtual Academy was better than Cyber Academy because they showed up for their first match.
So, hey, at the end of the day, that's something that we have echoed many times in the past, whether it's, say, Lucy Ragsdale or now Cyber Academy. Getting in, competing, and finding your way through all the matches that we provide is probably the best way to get as many points as possible. But speaking of which, Vaude, we're getting ready to finalize this out with the Southern section here. Let us take a look at those teams before we jump into our first lobby.
That's correct. We have so many teams here, 25 total. We'll get as many as we can that show up with some stragglers in the next few rounds, but a couple teams do have a lot of representation for their school. Garinger has a couple teams themselves. We also see plenty of teams for Hopewell, Huff as well. That's how you say that school name. Love it because it's like huffing, like the Huskies that are just huffing and puffing. That's what they're doing. And then you have some other great teams that are out there. Another virtual team. Maybe the virtual teams are going to be dominating the lobbies that are out there. Who knows?
Yeah, plenty in, North Mech, South Mech, West Mech. No East Mech though. We have lost the opportunity to get our friends out there. Don't even know if they exist.
Speaking of not existing, we don't know exactly which teams are going to show up in this first lobby. Right. That's the best thing about the first round is it's just where we're discovering who is out there, the teams to really look out for and keep an eye on through the rest of the rounds of competition. And typically whoever gets that first victory royale, they usually get it with a decent amount of eliminations because they're feeling confident. They typically, I think every time now actually, Zephyr, have made it into that top 4. So really going to depend how these teams fare going forward from here as things develop. But speaking of developing, we have found ourselves onto the island with a player already pretty injured here in Wolf Willia.
Yeah, Wolf Willow, the first individual that we do see starting to take some of their lumps here as the rest of the lobby is absolutely facing equivalent difficulties. It is left up to Gangatron, the last remaining member here, to stick out that revive where they can, as we're already down a full roster and sitting at 63 out of 70.
Whew, really quickly, too, with the way things have progressed so far into this one. And we do have some decent loot for Wolf and friends, so maybe they're going to be able to use that to get away with the broom. Gangatron trying to see what they can do, but a grenade comes through. The shockwave getting some more reach for them to try and escape as best as possible. And they got to quickly move away because that squad was coming right after them, and luckily enough for Wolf, they were able to get away, but their teammate, unfortunately, not going to be there, as they won't have really much of a chance to pick up that reboot card as well.
Not in that final moment to get the opportunity. Meanwhile, not looking much better. Sosa down here on the low ground of the Slapping Shore. Several teams already competing. Teasy sitting at low health time for the Hope Will team. Everybody will find just about anything.
They need to find time with the way that they have been stuck in this box. They do get a knock, though, on to Carlitos and the elimination there as well. So even with the pressure that they are facing, feeling confident. Slappy Shores, you could tell, already a very hotly contested drop spot.
right off the bat there. They are going to be able to get that refresh, which is at its most important here. Med Mist is available on Sosa to potentially pass that one over, but full med kit coming out. Sets this one up. Rocket Ram in hand potentially for that next rotation. You've got to be careful, though. So many teams from above willing to take advantage, and the immediate drop is there to punish. It was a good return, but not quite good enough.
And this is the Philip O'Berry Team A who took down this squad from the Hopewell Team B. So unfortunate for Hopewell, but this is a good first showing for Philip O'Berry with the dominance that they had. They had the high ground. They were able to take down that full squad, even with some other squads getting knocked down here and there. They were able to get everyone back into it. And you can see the synergy as well with the skins. I always like to see that too of squads.
I mean, it's a little additional detail that does assist in its slightest. I do want to confirm, I do believe this is actually Audrey Kell's initial Team A here. So coming through, I do believe there was Philip O'Berry in the midst of that fight.
That's
there
true, yeah.
as well. So a little bit of an assistance as they were also participating in some of that fight. But right off the bat, we'll say for Audrey Kell, one of the best performing rosters right out of the gates. One of the few to pick up a full squad eliminations. But between the two of us, Vod, that doesn't say much as of yet here. I remember it was just yesterday and even the days before that we were seeing teams in their first impressions here drop out 20 plus eliminations. And I remind folks at home, eliminations are pretty heavily stacked in this format.
That they are super heavily stacked, so the more eliminations you get, the better you do, especially if you get towards that 10. You're dealt with a lot of the lobby, and with how many players there are here, much easier to get those eliminations totals racked up for you and your teams. It's also why we've seen so much early eliminations of squads. I mean, from 21 to 15 at this point in time, so early into this. Whereas yesterday, if you would have been tuning in then, it took much longer for the majority of teams to get eliminated.
That being said, you've got two sides to this coin. A punishment for those early leavers in our lobby, right? The placements being more advantageous given that there are more teams competing, and the eliminations being a bit more stacked given that you have the opportunity to to source more here. We're going to jump over to Myers Parks, and they're getting themselves looted up just outside the Frenzy Field. Doesn't seem like there's much of a contest in the area.
Not much to really worry about at Frenzy Fields, even though it is a hot POI, as you can see with the highlighted text there, which means some better loot and other options that you have once you drop there, as it's a hot drop spot. But not many people dropping there, more with the Slappy Shores that we saw before. It was basically 3 or 4 squads in that section, whereas players were able to somehow take eliminations and just snipe out from the distance and maybe disengage if they can. You can see some NPCs spawning in there from a rift, and that's always a cool thing about Fortnite since they added that feature, is that you can get better weapons. Maybe you can recruit one to just be a distraction for you as well. There's so many different objectives in this game, just alongside getting the eliminations in the Victory Royale.
Yeah, it's a good way to get yourself geared up for those situations where you then have to be in competitive fashion. You can see them beginning to take some of those as they go through with the scan moments ago. I do want to make mention of it while we are still deciding some of these names. Panzer, a big one that has once again popped up here for the second time around. It is that Audrey Kell team, as they have found 2 additional, I believe, eliminations there. So potentially something to lead with there as well. Kizlock's coming through to drop on Dragon Slayer.
Love the name Dragon Slayer. Unfortunately, their name didn't really live up to the skill that we saw from them in the feed on that one. But as you can see, the number of squads has not gone down, so they have one of their players still remaining for them in that team, so they don't have to worry too much about that. But we still keep seeing things progress as the zone takes its time in these early opening spots for the drops that we have seen from these teams, and they're just taking their time to really get looted up and get some better weapons as we move on over to a solo in Tracker.
Hey, as long as you are here in the lobby making it happen, that is the best thing that you can set up for yourself. I believe this being that of the JT Williams High School, as Tracker has got quite a bit of this cut out for themselves, as right off the bat here, running into potentially another team. Might have to slow things down. It was just yesterday. We talked about Braden more, but oh no, I can't believe this. Brexy just barely missing angle. I swear, he's got to know.
Somehow doesn't. Somehow doesn't know, but
Oh.
they are taking their time,
Oh,
seeing if they can know. I mean, they got to know that they're there. Or maybe like notice that somebody was rotating, was hoping that they could spot them out. And I think that is the scenario here. As you can see them bobbing and weaving and expecting someone to be coming from the storm. But the more time they take, the more time there is to rotate. But they didn't take enough time there. They had plenty of meds to work with. And being a solo, you don't really have too much options to work with there. Some decent builds, but they got overcome pretty quickly. So just got to escape. And that's exactly what they're doing on the Witch's Broom.
very nice. Redeploy, but we know that that broom can put you in the air as a sitting duck, and as a result, Tracker on that escape at least takes the 150. And remember, at the end of the day, this is a 4v1 wall. Brexy's going to be the one that puts the nail in the coffin here. We know for a fact that there was always more than enough for these squads to follow through with.
Fortunate to say the least. Trying to figure out exactly which squad this is too, but if anyone knows at home, has been watching this team, knows exactly which squad we're currently spectating, let us know. It might be the Philip O'Berry Team B, as they did not give us their usernames, so.
This is true. We do our best with the information we're provided, and for this squad, it's something that we've got to know sometime soon because they continue to rack up their success. We say goodbye to at least King missed on one end, but it will come at the cost of what looks like a full squad here. Slushy missed on the other angle, going to be that last remaining member. A break on the wall to try to find the edit. Drops below off of the tackle of that one and finds the wipe where it counts here. Now, the loss on King Ken is a big one, but at the end of the day, it is still an additional 4 elims here now.
Great eliminations, great building skill that we saw here from Brexy. I mean, they have all the confidence, and they're going to get that reboot van for King Ken
immediately
to try and just get back up. But they got to be careful because there's another squad pushing on them immediately, and they're going to take as much time as they can, but it wasn't enough to get that reboot to go through. Instead, Brexy now needs to see if his teammates can back them up as best as possible, and still winning out in these gunfights. What insane skill that we just witnessed there.
Right here, Providence's Team B on their way forward to try to capitalize off of this reboot, but instead is facing potentially their end immediately through the box on the end of their Skull Kids. Will get the breakaway, but from behind, OKKBF is able to support Brexy where it counts. Legendary Slurp Juice in this action is just Coneyfish on the low ground, tries to go for that edited shot, but the roof now taken away here. Oh, and just add the extra boom on the builds to break down these walls. Tries to find it off of that hit. Unable to do so. OKKBF now on the other side to punish this out is Coneyfish sitting at 25 as little but seconds. The Storm as well now being a pressuring factor.
And that gives some time for this Brexy team to just back off a little bit, see if they can push the issue. Mailbox, you can see taken down there too, which I believe is another player on that Providence Team B. So not really a good position for them, but Coneyfish trying to see if they could get that revive wasn't going to work out for them. So they have to now try and contest with OKKBF as well. While they're going back to the Storm for Brexy, they are hungry for this elimination, knowing that it's worth 2 points. And there they get it with the sticky grenade launcher. It was about time, and going for the reboot van. Nice to see.
And just to confirm, now that we now have this information, we did a double check. It is Geringer's Team B that has such a heavy lead there in that early game. Some of the best eliminations that we have seen right off of the bat. And to boot, doing it at a disadvantage here, losing out super duper early on their first teammate, but continuing to defend. Here in the Rubble Runes, a little bit some additional action. The island obviously in play just above this one here. Want to see if they can potentially take advantage. Philip O'Berry's Team A taking to the skies and trying to track off of that zip line. It'll be MJ on G Fuel, the last potential member that they should get the knock on here. Now staying at no health remaining practically.
Unfortunate to say the least there. MJ on G Fuel looking for some sort of escape for Philip O'Berry to survive on this, because I believe earlier on the majority of their squad got wiped in that first encounter that we witnessed in Slappy Shores, but now in the Rumble Ruins, have to face against a whole different team with the Predator that's got their infrared vision, just waiting to see if they can take down their prey that's patiently waiting here, falling into their trap. NJ on G Fuel is down, but it does mean that there's at least one player alive on that squad, so good for them to still keep in the competition. Talking about that, we're already into our top 8.
Top 8 to boot here, and we'll join back in with the squad that we talked about earlier. It is none other than Audrey Kell. Still hot on the trail of so many of their eliminations, but needing to defend for themselves here. It is clear that they have at least lost out on one. In the meanwhile, I believe this might be the Huff team, but we'll get confirmation in just a moment. For now, just choking them out. Trying to see if they can play on the edge of the storm here and block or gatekeep this next rotation.
And that's so important to make sure it's difficult for them to escape. And I believe you are right. This is Huff Team C with Swifty on that roster here, looking for something to try and maybe just escape from the situation as they are rotating around with the rest of their teammates there as well. Lion, Ramen, and Swifty looking to move away here again, but still difficult situation for themselves.
Yeah, taking the time. It'll be the elimination of HMZ Ramen here already. Swifty for the high angle to get some advantages, but unable to truly do so. Is able to get away for now, but the separation going to be a huge difficulty.
Yeah, Ramen down there. Swifty's able to get away for a second. Lion still up for a second as well, but not too much longer with Panzer on the prowl, looking for some sort of a finish on this or a knock, but Lion using the Witch's Broom to escape for a second. Panzer on just the aggressive rotation forward to try and get this final elimination. Did get knocked down there too, though, and maybe they'll get eliminated themselves for being overzealous.
Swifty here now on their lone slime. Gotta see Gizlock start to push forward here, take advantage, but they're maybe going to play this one out a bit smarter, knowing that they have the resources and, more notably, probably the time to spare. Can go for the full heal, but this just allows L10N to find their way over. I'm going to assume that is a Lion.
Yep.
And as a result, Savage is knocked out here. So what was an advantage, a positional take, has now been capitalized on here, as this might be it for Audrey Kell, as good as they have performed in that early game.
And unfortunate to say the least for that Audrey Kell squad, who looked like they could have cleared things out there for a moment, but now we're back onto another unknown team that we're looking into. Predator, Evgen, Kala, Big City, and Spookly Dude allegedly down, but could be just a spectator thing that we're experiencing on at the top of the floating island here, getting back into the zone, riding a dragon. Always love the cool cosmetics that are in this game too, based on the different gliders that you can use as well. But speaking of gliding, might be able to just glide right into and away from a lot of the competitors that are out there, and maybe find a good spot for their team to get all looted up and ready for the next zone.
Yeah, taking the time here underneath. Meanwhile, Gizlock, an insane pickup in terms of those elims in their own right there, literally surviving in their lonesome after that initial fight for Audrey Kell, and now successful to keep that one going forward. Surprise, as it, I believe, is at this point either a solo or even a duo left standing within the 8 squads remaining here.
8 squads. We've had 8 squads for a decent amount of time, so Audrey Kell still up for what we know at this point as well with the rotations we saw. I think they just had a player or two that was able to escape from that early engagement we witnessed earlier against the Huff Team C squad, who somehow were able to hold on for their life to get away from that engagement. But Storm Eye is shrinking in the next 10 seconds, and now more players rotating into the current circle. As we do see them get on top of the foliage, which the trees here make it a bit different for the high ground for a lot of these teams, as the rotation is going to be coming in pretty soon.
Take their time. There's that Gizlock entity now, I believe, yes, as a solo individual above the creaky compound here, but one that is just as dangerous as any other. Take their time, and surprisingly for Predator and crew, they actually decide to play this one a bit slower. Not interested in getting directly into foray.
Makes sense. I mean, they have time to spare. More eliminations coming out from other players and teams. Finally, another squad drops, and it was taking a lot of time. So really, they're just trying to look towards the late game. And you talk about Kizlock again. We see another elimination for them, 2 actually to boot. They are popping off for their team.
Meanwhile, Geringer's team B really and aggressively moving up this hill. It is an immediate take on Rohan there off of that initial edit, so not much to truly say as Brexy picks up Midi on the other side. Storm beginning to move in as well, which at least elicits the response for why we see this movement, but no real damage on the pushback there. Incredibly successful, albeit Kexi is Anakin now successfully getting that knock. It will, though, come at the cost of Keo. So they're going to have to stem some time here, maybe see if they can expend the revive. I know OKKBF has to deal with Zalculus a primary first.
Ken doing pretty good for this team too. You see a player that is knocked down there. Breezy also knocked down too. So OKKBF is trying to get them back up, see what they can do for their team. Ken also very dangerously low. Really just a matter of time for Fab, VL, TG, and the rest of these players potentially to push in, but actually they're getting knocked from the distance by that unnamed squad that we talked about earlier in the treetops, just sniping from the distance.
It's a big return, at least something to give safety over to XCX and Zalculus over on that other side. But OKKBF finding the end of Zalculus, leaving just 2 up, even with that sudden revive onto midday there. And you just gotta praise where it's due. Evan and them with their full set, but Eminem's wife moving up here to the tree line. They don't want to let them have their cake and eat it too. And just as quickly as I say that is the immediate end of this roster. Oh, so quickly.
That's how the cookie crumbles so many times in these different lobbies, depending on where your positioning is and how things are going down with the fights and how many health items you have built up at this point in time. And it doesn't really look like too many health items here for Evgen and the rest of their team. So they're going to have to be careful and maybe try and loot some of the remains of the other teams that are out there. We can see just one giant build that so many of these teams, and Kizlock getting on top of it. That solo player who we would typically call a rat, but really they've been doing anything but ratting. They've been going for eliminations and taking down everyone.
I believe this once again, that Audrey Kell roster as a solo member, by the way, this builds such a heavy investment for these teams here, now completely abandoned with the presence of Kizlock above. I don't even know if they know that is a full roster or not here. And Kizlock heavily now in the lead, may not be winning this game. We'll have to wait and see, but the eliminations alone at 16 currently is an insane number to beat here. That's at minimum 32 points right there on the board, the equivalency of a win or greater in this lobby.
And we see Swifty yet again down there, that team who was able to escape after taking down one of the players from Audrey Kell earlier on, Panzer, in that one-on-one situation. So maybe some revenge from up high, but really Kizlock trying to play for the late game even more so. Only 4 squads remaining now, so even better chances for them to get to that point, with a lot of teams not having the full power that you would typically expect, especially looking at all the health bars of these players. A lot of them don't even have any shield.
Oh, and immediately our no-name squad facing difficulties at the face of Kizlock. This early rotation into the front end of Storm has paid off so well here. As a result, I do believe we might be seeing the end of Swifty and Lion there, I believe, from that Garinger. No, my apologies, not the Garinger roster. I believe that is the Huff Team C roster. And for Kizlock, it is one more placement closer, but now truly the only solo stuff standing in the game here. Evgen's going to be sticking that revive onto Caleb.
Smart, making sure that they can focus on getting their forces back up so that they can try and take on what looks like this entire squad from Garinger Team B, who have been doing so well for themselves for the majority of this game. I mean, we see King Ken, OKKBF, Breezy is what I've learned that is for B Breezy there for their player, and then Fab VL also on that team.
I'll tell you what, it is a strong start for Garinger as they are the dominant factor, but going for this fight on the low ground against our no-name might not be the most advantageous situation there. Big launch up in the sky from Kizlock, taking advantage of that height, trying to buy their time. But KSN's Predator looking to follow up a box-on-box action here, something that'll hopefully set up the Predator crew as stuck on 25 or below. It's going to be that medal that gets them back up to 50 in the shielding for now. Still though, 4 for Garinger, hard to compete with.
Very hard to compete with, especially with all the builds getting destroyed. Predator going down there too. Took a little bit of time for that team to be affected by all of the action up to this point in time, but Breezy doing so well. Kizlock also on these rotations just to get away from this scenario as it's developing. But really, if they want a chance to win this, they got to go for some sort of elimination, some sort of knock while these two teams are fighting off against each other. And if they're just going to be waiting things out in the storm, they're just going to be having to settle for a second place, using everything they can. They don't really have many options, and they are one-shotted. Can't even do anything against KBF in this scenario. And Garinger Team B are a force to be reckoned with.
Already now in the setup here as one left standing sets them up for the very first victory royale of the day. Congratulations once again to Garinger's Team B here.
Definitely will learn who that second placing team is once we get the calculations going. Maybe it is that team who didn't fill out their roster and Philip O'Berry Team B. It could be that squad.
It could be them.
It might be a different team that is out there. If you are that team, let us know what your team is so that we can call you the right team and give you credit where it is due. But we have great admins in the background, so they'll be calculating all of that for us. But Garinger Team B, with the way that they were performing, I mean, they had their whole squad the entire time, didn't have much to worry about, and that seemed to be the difference maker here, Zephyr.
It definitely has set them up to be in the lead in terms of placement, but Kizlock is a name I will not forget here from the Audrey Kell roster. And while, yes, we saw them face their difficulties early, losing out on so many of their members, the question still remains at 16 eliminations, right around there. That is still a very competitive place to finish with, even if you're going out in third.
Well, great placement, great eliminations. That's what we need for the great teams who are going to make it into the top 4. The final 4 to join the 12 we have crowned so far from the other 3 regions. This is the Southern region for the VESL Fortnite Regionals. We'll be back after this break and going into round 2 shortly. We are back, and shout out to Garinger for getting the win at the end there. We heard that it was Mallard Creek who was the second placing team in that last round with the way that they are performing, and then also some great performances from Audrey, Kel, or AK, who were able to pop off of Kizlock getting so many eliminations. We don't have the all point totals yet, Zephyr. We'll get those a little bit later on because we're having some shenanigans with players not giving us the right names for the teams that they're playing on, but we'll figure that out along the way. But we'll be getting into this lobby in just a moment.
It is a little bit of a struggle, but we're doing our best here. Once again, it is Garinger. we now assume off of the back on their win and some great eliminations. Garinger holding the top position, just behind them being that of the Audrey Kell roster, which we did see with those 16 eliminations. A small mention though towards Huff's Team C coming through there in the end, placing within that top 4, albeit were a wrap by their final moments. Still were able to place consistently in that perspective. And that's all you need to do. I know we've got 5 rounds going today, but replicating that kind of success consistently is where it counts here.
Zephyr, guess how many eliminations Garinger had when they got their victory royale?
Is it 22?
It is 22. The third time we have had the first team in the first round get a victory royale with 22 eliminations. This is insanity.
Every single day, the first winner finishes with 22 eliminations. Now the real question is, we're learning these players, we're seeing their success in real time, and the first round is always so fun to see where that tempo is being placed. But who can make it happen again? Do we have things like Greenlow? Do we have a replication of the virtual academy? Teams who quite literally won almost the entire day? Or do we see a separate victor?
It's a good question. We'll have to find out as we go through these rounds, see the way the different players perform. Ramen, we saw a decent amount of times the last go around, and they're trying to do everything that they can for Huff Team C with Lion and Swifty from the way that they were performed before. Coneyfish too, though, already taking out Breezy. That's a big hit for them because that was the team who made it so far down.
It's definitely a struggle there. Meanwhile, here in this current action, we see some issues for Charlotte's virtual team, already losing out on Eminem's wife. That's right, herself there. And facing their difficulties. It is a good solid response though from Lil Sheen on the opposite side, never at the best place of a common weaponry, but making the damage count where you can. Those full eliminations are annoying, but Rohan is still tackled out and dropped as well. King Awesome able to get out of this situation, and there you go, a full elimination secured for Lil Sheen, evening up the numbers here.
Looks like there's just so many fights happening in these POIs right now. As you can see on the feed, Ramen getting more eliminations. We already saw Lion go down too, so there's just trades happening after trades, but no full squads have been wiped just yet. We saw this XZ player and the rest of their team do pretty decent in the last round, making it into the top 8, I believe, but this would be a very detrimental early wipe for them if they do get knocked down here in this 2-on-2 situation, with mainly Lil Sheen just pushing forward to see if they can find them, but hasn't had any luck just yet.
Ooh, the top-down rocket to drop almost all of Lil Sheen's height. I believe this is hopeful here. Lil Sheen taking the risky play, going for the pot directly in the heat of the action, with the coverage, though, of King Awesome to help. Granted, immediately from below, gets a bit of that shock down, takes to the sky. Mid-A trying to do it again, but fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, and I'll still get eliminated nonetheless there.
Unfortunate to say the least for that team to get eliminated for virtual, as they were doing all that they really could in this one, but unfortunate there. As we talk about Lion, Swifty, Ramen, and Jack B, the way that they are performing so far, the Mega City seems to be where all that action was going down. And looking at the mini map a little bit, you can see some NPCs are out there, but still some other squads still available. We did have the one full squad wipe, so the winners of last time, Garinger, that we talked about, were getting pushed on, and Breezy going down so early. Luckily, they were able to escape at least with 1 or 2 players here or there.
Yeah. And granted, meanwhile, on this other end, a bit of an issue, I believe, for Hopewell's team B, as we come off of Hopewell team A here, is now being targeted out. Full assault potentially for Huff, as Jacked looking for angles off of this back end, trying to cover the opposite side, but not quite there just yet. Sneaking through from below might be an advantage, but Ramen already down on the opposite side means that this is a 2v1. Swifty, the last remaining member left standing here now for Huff. Gonna have to see how they pull that one off in the long term.
And that is the JT Williams team yet again that we saw with Tracker, the way that they were performing before, able to pop off pretty well there. Now we hop on again with Panzer and company. The way this team performed last round, they looked pretty solid for the most part when it came to the eliminations, but we'll have to see how well they can survive going forward as Teasy taken out by Swifty there.
Yeah, immediately down, and all be said, done potentially for that roster. We'll have to see where they stand and fall, but right now, Kizlock and crew is definitely the team that we like to play off of. Great eliminations in the hand of Audrey Kell, and potentially more here. Panzer with the full fresh set against Midi up front, but not quite anything in the Brutal Bastion yet. But granted, a team very, very separated, and for Midi, maybe seconds away from their end.
Audrey Kell did pretty decent last time too. They got third place with 16 eliminations. Not quite the full total that we saw for the eventual winners, but did as well as they could with Kizlock carrying, I think, having around 8 or 9 eliminations towards the end of it there. But now we saw this team earlier with XD trying to survive with that duo, but can't really do too much. But they were able to escape for a second on the launch pad. Kizlock trying to find the right weapon to use, maybe just spamming it a little bit too much when they could have just gone for the shotgun blast and got one off, but didn't get the reload in time with it. So they were able to escape somehow, and you can see in the feed, OKKBF from that Garinger team already taken out again.
This is a big
And
issue
King
for
Ken.
them, as King Ken is down as well. This could potentially be their last moments here, as the roster that
They're
just
gone.
won it all there. Pavel as well. Mailbox does get a response on their own fight, though, so not completely said and done just yet. I believe this Providence's B team here in their own fight.
Trying to do everything that they can to get these eliminations, looking pretty good for themselves as well. And there they go. They do get that. Not a full wipe because there was one player able to escape, as you can see on the top with the squads that do remain. And still plenty of players to clean up. I mean, 3 eliminations looking pretty good here. So big wins there, as there is a Mailbox just, I think, got blown up somehow at the end there. But nonetheless, one player surviving is all you need sometimes, as you could just see a bunch of players just in the water on that platform trying to see if they can get some loot there. And Toji, I think, saw them for a second, but didn't quite notice it in time to want to pursue it.
Well, still, it's a big win for Butler here. 4 eliminations off of that successful third party. Sets them to their grave, and now have all the time in the world to potentially look for that next rotation. Grouping back up with Limit Crypt. They've got to be a bit careful. They are countered on both sides here, but have plenty of time to set up. We still have 18 squads remaining, though, and that Storm in its very, very early phase. So back to your standard looting period, getting well acquainted, but they do slowly continue to drift ever so slightly closer to this other roster, who, if you can look at that minimap, definitely seems to have a better eye on them.
That's very true. Good situation so far for that other team, because they're on the top of this hill here. Not too much that they gotta really do. Dragon Slayer and Ninja, we saw Dragon Slayer get knocked earlier on, so I guess they got brought back up for their team, but I guess the rotation is more important right now than trying to go after that other squad and get into a better spot. They don't know where exactly they are. Maybe some of their members aren't in the best spot when it comes to loot pool, so I want to go for something else. But we do see Lion, Swifty, Ramen, and the rest of the squad in the crosshairs of Justin on this play. Radioactive and their other player with a trio, not a full squad for this team, so they're just trying to be careful as well. And it's taken a lot more time, Zephyr, in round 2 than the previous one for eliminations to come through.
I mean, teams definitely being a lot more respectful here. This is the Palisades, as they face their difficulties early in this last round, and as a result, you can see why they kind of hold the trigger finger here against Huff's C team.
taking their time, waiting for the storm eye to shrink in, because that's when all these teams are going to have to eventually start moving. You can see 4 teams on the mini map just in this area alone.
I can't believe this.
The shockwave grenade, kind of a weird situation there, but Swifty moving in, maybe not exactly when they were wanting to, so backing off on the play there.
Meanwhile,
Evan,
Creek also here now.
Yeah, we saw Evan before, Caleb Big City, Spookly Dude, and Alexander Power with the way that they performed, and getting that second place finish last time was huge for them. Only had 6 eliminations though, so currently in 4th with the rankings, but more of those shockwave grenades kind of just going wild, and Spookly guy getting some good shields knocked down on KTW Justin, who has to completely build up, and all these teams converging on each other. Kirosaki, though, with 3-piece themselves.
Huge on the other side of the map, but for Justin, still trying to find the opportunity. Gets the recovery back over to Strip trying, but they're going to lose out on Radioactive in the meanwhile. That one picked up by Predator below. Justin and crew just opting to run this one out here. Meanwhile, Swifty is dropped. Caleb, Evan, and crew from Creek still set as 3. It's the perfect opportunity, though, for Huff. Caleb so low, though. Predator with the defense, but they group up quick.
Bad spot to be in for Creek here, as they are trying to see if they can escape this situation that they have found themselves in, and they do get a decent amount away for Evan and Predator. So they're taking their time. Caleb Big City also just looking for something, but chunked a lot. Really one good shot, and they'll be knocked down. Lion looking for it as well. Can't really get it just yet. Jacketed B backing off themselves and seeing if they can re-engage here, as Caleb Big City finally eliminated by Lion. Players grouping up onto the squad, but they don't have as many members as they were hoping to in this fight.
No, at this point here, down and out, Evan will fall as well, leaving at least one remaining member on the opposite, Predator, to hold out here. And while squads are potentially close by to recover, it is only seconds away. Takes this guy, and it is a big blast that prevents Predator from getting completely dominated out there from Lion's perspective. But now, a little bit of the respect as well, as we do see QT Sugar in another roster. You have to take note. Swifty's full elimination, a big issue, but thankfully, a reboot
van
right there.
Nothing to worry about for this squad. I mean, they were quickly able to pick up that reboot token as well, so that they can get them back into the fight as best they can. Slushy missed, we see here. The team we haven't spectated just yet, facing off against BBC Spark. Try and take them down. Really just making sure that they can get healed up if they want to push into that box, but they know they don't really have to do it just yet. Waiting for their teammates to feel confident about it. And BBC Spark doing the best that they can to escape, but really nothing just yet.
It is going to be Johnny at Bravo. That is dropped down in that meanwhile there, and potentially have to look for the recovery. Kirosaki, that was that individual that we saw earlier with the triple eliminations. Now taking out Brandy as well. Break on the other end as you've got to have Chicken and Slushy here from Huff. Try to work this one out, but it is officially a 2v2. Spark turning right round. Rocket Ram takes to the skies here. With moments to spare, is on the defensive. Height still in Slushy's factor, but the peak is just wide. Takes the time for the legendary Slurp Juice, and that will mean the world, though, as that metal steps up. Meanwhile, Kirosaki is above. An eagle on the eyes here, taking advantage for Rocky River.
Rocky River with Kirosaki have been just tearing up the feed as best as they can with the way that they've been performing so far. So huge looks from them, and now we do see Slushy Miss being pushed in is again by BBC Spark, who's taking no time to waste. Eventually, the metal is all going to be gone after using all of these sticky grenades to try and take it down, but you have the shotgun come out, but they were having to load it up, and Slushy Miss, because of that, and not having it preloaded, was taken down.
For Spark versus Crew, it is a huge loss. The Chicken OP, the only last remaining member. Kirosaki, though, does go down to fall damage here for Rocky River. And for Huff, it is down to a 1v1 between them and the Chicken OP here. And in its end, the Chicken OP is able, in their final moments, to pull out that shot. What was supposed to be a superior advantage is, well, cut by fall damage.
Unfortunate. Chicken OP, though, I love the name. Love the names that a lot of these players are coming up with so far in this one. Alibi, we saw a little bit earlier on from Butler Team A that they were doing really good when it came to eliminations. 5 for themselves and 1 apiece for the rest of their teammates, who a couple of them still up there. 1 knocked down, though. Toji right at the bottom of this floating island. I don't know how well they're going to be able to get to them. They do have the Witch's Broom. They do have an angle to go for, and that's exactly what they're going to do. But they got to be careful here. But they did land in the water, so they didn't have to worry about anything, and nobody is paying them any mind. So they are going to get that revive off and bring them back up.
Well, Barry's here on the other side for Phillip. They are in the driver's seat below, but not really tracking this one out. As a result, Toji is brought back completely in full for this roster in the full 4-on-4 here. As a result, it will be Phillip O'Berry potentially now looking for the opposite or next rotation. Wow, they are really one box at a time.
Taking all the time necessary and then just waiting to try and bait out the other team maybe before they use the rift to escape. Wise decision for them. Both teams actually using their rifts to get out of the area. So we do see MJ on G Fuel. Love the team name there. Phillip O'Berry escaping as quickly as they can to get away from the situation. Right towards another team too on the coast.
It's not the best situation, but it is one that presents a different difficult option here. Granted, it is only just height being held out. It is still more than enough time for Phillip O'Berry to get regrouped. Granted, I don't see all 4 members. It does seem like there was a very minor split here. As you can see, I believe that 4th member up there on the hillside potentially taking off angles.
Carlitos, we saw eliminated kind of early on in that last round, so nice to see that they are surviving a little bit better than they did before. And Carlitos and this crew is from one of the Garinger teams that are out there trying to see how well that they can survive. This is the technical B team, I guess. They changed their rosters up a little bit to spook the competition.
Yeah, I mean, coming through on the last day of just, I mean, if you don't even know who you're playing with yourself, how can the enemy? You know, it's something that it'll hopefully pay off well in the long run. Is hey, technically, Garinger already in that major lead for the top 4 here. Meanwhile, for QT, Suskar, a bit of a difficulty eliminated in there, and it is none other than Kizlock, Panzer, and crew here taking advantage of that height. This is that roster that we saw picking up those 16 eliminations for Adrical.
Ooh, and there goes the elimination there too. The entire squad wiped there. That was the Huff Team B, who was trying to survive as best they could. But now hopping back on with the squad that we kind of started around with, Butler Team A. Looking at the rankings from this squad as well, I don't think they performed. They didn't even make it into the lobby last time, I think. So this is their first appearance, which is why we're seeing them perform so well. And we might not have seen them in the last one.
Well, there you go. Already right off the bat, sitting at
another
those
Panthers
eliminations. And yeah, more additional stuff on the side there. Lion as well popping up, and they're actually going to arrive just across from them here. Granted, now we tune back into KSM Predator. That was that final member from our very, very early on fight here. And granted, defensive covering instead. Gotta see what kind of direction we're looking to focus at here. Right now, a bit of a kind of mixed spread, just making sure you're playing the off angle. Still though, TTV Pios on the opposite side going to be the one that secures that initial elimination from Phillip O'Berry.
And Mallard Creek going out in 10th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken there, with that final member taking down. Unfortunate to say the least, because it wasn't a knock, it was just a straight elimination once they got taken there. So Swifty apparently is also facing the music this time, and they were struggling earlier on from what we were witnessing for their team. So a lot of teams that we saw doing pretty good, getting knocked down early. Kizlock also.
Kizlock, that'll be issues found there as it's left up to Panzer and them. And the eliminations have been good, but they're going up against some of the best there, trying for the full wipe on Jacked. It will be secured. You can see Lion on the interior with that legendary Slurp Juice. Still, the damage is just as quick as it could be, but no! Is dropped in the midst of the storm. Now Lion on that full heal coming through from that Slurp Juice. hopefully maybe able to stem out the revives. Doesn't look good here for Audrey Kell, though. It is just Savage Ninja forced to potentially wrap this one away. Panzer wiped out in the storm, and even Savage
Ooh.
found out in the end. Lion, the detriment to this roster, and now
They're out too.
looks just barely like it. I think they might have gotten the heal off.
Oh, wow. That is such an insane scenario to find themselves in for that team, as we do see eliminations come out left and right between these squads, as the overlay really just trying to keep up with the action, because how many teams and players have been getting eliminated up to this point. It still says there's 8, but I feel like that's incorrect.
I think we'll have to see. Solo members potentially left
least,
alive.
yeah.
For Kalitos, it is at least 1 on MJ on G Fuel. Doesn't actually get the elimination off.
Ooh.
Tries to go for the
There's
full
one
thirst
down.
there, but is caught out. For Filippo Berry, it is another elimination. The first they've tacked on after their initial wipe here. Gotta take their time for this revive, but are being blasted over on the side. Just barely get this one off.
Oh, and Limit Cryptic rotating in. Alibi waiting there as well on the edge for them to all rotate around from this team who hopped in for the first time this round, didn't really have a performance before, and now they are making waves in this second round for Butler Team A. I guess it looks like bulldogs of a sort are
I like
hungry
that, Butler
and doing everything that they
Bulldogs.
can.
Yeah. Successful, at least right now, setting up for their height. One of the few teams to have a full form in roster alongside Filippo Berry there. Curious to see if Slushy Mist and Chicken OP got their entire team back. It does not look like it. So left as a duo alongside, once again, Tracker as that solo. We've seen this one again, and we might not be seeing it for long there. Spotted out in the storm, slowly ticking away. Even Alibi expending themselves, and I believe it will come down to the Butler Bulldogs over here finding that initial drop.
That it will. And it does look like an interesting scenario for the Butler Bulldogs, because they are right next to another player in Chicken OP and Slushy Mist, who
Loses
they have
Huff.
to worry about here. One of the Huff squads you mentioned as well. And Huff's been having a tough time of it for the most part for a lot of their teams. Slushy, really, this is the longest we've seen Huff Team A survive, because they took a fall a little bit earlier on in round 1.
Yeah, had some issues in that round 1, and even in this game, it was close. It was literally down to a 1v1 that the Chicken OP had just barely won out against some of the other individuals here. Alibi with at least that first elimination, now leaving that as a wrap. We do have another additional wrap, by the way. Crazed on the other side here, and you cannot, it could not be even better trying to hide away.
Man.
It is the third camera, the third person camera that gives you up.
It really is unfortunate, unfortnite. I mean, that's what I like to say sometimes. But speaking of 4, we have that many teams remaining here. Still 10 players, though, so not full squads across the board for these teams, though it is a full squad for Alibi and the rest of the Butler Team A, who have been popping off so far here. As we do see the storm moving from a distance. There is another full squad across the way, too, as you can see with Coneyfish and Momocraft. Or not Coneyfish, actually, it's just Coneyfish.
It's just Coneyfish
there, yeah.
Coneyfish is struggling out from Providence B and was able to wrap for moments longer. Somehow, some way, though, it does look like Momocraft gets into a sight line. TTV coming from Filippo Berry is completely dropped out there. That is going to be providing a 3v4 advantage now, potentially, for the Butler Bulldogs. We're still going to wait and see, though. Providence B team, and finally, yes, Momo now getting a taste of their own medicine there, but Naps just as quickly reaffirms the numbers disadvantage 2 now for Filippo Berry, and even potentially one more. MJ on G Full, stuck in the storm, 12 to go, needs to run, but is unable to do it.
Oh, Kexy's still alive for them, though, and they're not going to be able to get this revive in time with the way things are moving. But Crazed, who was surviving for so long from Myers Park, did get taken down by Kexy, so there is another elimination coming out for that team. A huge pickup for them, but looking at the team that's on top of the world right now, Alibi, Toji, and Limit Cryptic, it seems like a matter of time for that team to clean up the rest of the competition. Kexy, the only one remaining for their squad for Filippo Berry, Team A, but this is a big placement for Filippo Berry with the way that they had been looking in that last round.
Takes to the sky one last time. And the Butler's Bulldogs, well, as aggressive as they are, haven't quite trained their sightlines. No builds here for Limit Cryptic, but the Red Witch's Broom just enough to get up on height. Has to play this one a little safe, though. Takes the time to jump back down, get that legendary Slurp Juice, and for 3 players still left alive, this has been a close exchange there. Alibi taking the heyday of this pressure, and now Kezi's Anakin, even though they get that final knock, they still face their end.
That they do. Victory Royale comes out. Philip O'Berry, unfortunately for them, weren't able to survive as long as they wanted to get more eliminations, but they did the best that they were with the hand that was dealt to them. And that's what we saw happen with a lot of these teams. So many solo players towards the end of that, where we saw tons of players getting eliminated at the end, but none of the actual team total going down for the top 8 for such a long time.
And it's just the presence of so many of these teams hanging on by that final member, whether it was Myers Park or Providence B and Coney Fish. These teams were just trying to last where it counted. So for Butlers, it is a huge win there in their first, I believe, presence. You made mention of that, representing in Game 2 with a win right off of the bat.
Huge win for them. Maybe they'll be able to continue that into the top 4. We've seen it from other teams who have had similar performances. And if they keep things up there and knock out the top teams like we saw happen in this round, it's going to be some tough competition for that top 4 to make it into the state finals. But that's only round 2. We still have 3 more to go. So we'll be back after this. Shout out to Butler Team A on the Victory Royale. Try saying that 5 times fast. In round 2, as we did see Garinger get the first one. Now Butler, who joined the fray. Is there going to be another team who didn't show up in the first 2 rounds? Come out of the woodwork and win a Victory Royale here, Zephyr.
It has happened quite a few days in a row with what was recently Lucy Ragsdale winning 2, I believe, in our central competition there, even though they didn't participate in our first round. So who knows? There's always the opportunity to compete. But hey, another major shout to Philippa Berry right there, working their way all the way to the very, very end there along teams such as Myers as well.
Yeah, great works being put in by these players to survive as long as they can, sometimes even getting eliminations towards the end. But we got to give a little bit of a heckling to the players. Submit your correct names, please, so that we can score things easier. We don't have a score update because of that. We'll probably have one at the end of the day once we get everything all tallied in. So we don't know exactly where everyone stands currently, but you just got to win and get eliminations. That's all you need to know at this point.
There's a lot of teams that have done really well, but something that I am noticing right off the bat is in terms of the names that we saw in Game 1 that did well between Garinger and, of course, Audrey Kelly, as well as Huff, my apologies. They were not a repeat offender coming out of Game 2. So it isn't a dominant green level or Newburn Team A who are just consistently at the very top end of the bracket. It is just something, to say the least, that we will, how do I say this? It is something to competitively work for all day long. You do not have you're not landing that win again and again and again, so you've got to show up.
That you do. Show up as best as you can for all of these games is what we need to see from these teams. But again, only so much you can do in those first 2 rounds as we move into the next one here against the competition. Really gonna see exactly where the early eliminations come through, because that was what we saw happen a couple of times between these teams. And now we take a look on the full squad of Dragon Slayer and company, where I think they had just Dragon Slayer once, and then they had Dragon Slayer and Ninja, and now they have their full squad this time.
All right, so for Harding, they are now officially competing in a sense of where they currently stand. Meanwhile, I will say quite a few other names popping up in the feed currently. XCX facing difficulties once again, but King Ken going down very early.
Oof, not a good look for them with the way that they were performing there. But this team that we are witnessing it right now with Grayish and company doing just having a good time on Naughty Nets. Fully unaware of anyone else that they have to deal with, so we'll be switching POVs to Spookly Dude, Predator, Evan, and Caleb Big City that we talked about a little bit earlier on, with the way that this team from Mallard Creek, they actually were another squad who did well in round 1 but got eliminated fairly early on in the round last time.
Yeah, immediately at the very beginning here, as now at this point, full
Butler with a wipe almost.
We'll say Eclipse Estates taking the time to get their loot up right now. Evan on the low ground, and everybody's just working their way through the traps. There's one better place to get your loot set up. Always love the by the way, the cone blocking turrets. That's why you don't see the suitcase too often.
That is very true. You don't see that suitcase very often at all. And what we have seen very often in the feed right now is Audrey Kell, or AK, doing pretty good for themselves in eliminations, but also Butler Team A running directly into Garinger Team A, who got that first Victory Royale. So one team already eliminated. I don't think it was Garinger just yet, but a difficult situation to find themselves in if it was.
And that's something you can't possibly have right now. We already discussed the fact that it isn't exact, though. But there with Kizlock popping up once more for Audrey Kell, I think that might be securing it. We'll have to check back in later. But even if it isn't, granted, still very early, reboot buses, etc. But being put at a back foot and having to work with the lack of time that you have to get looted up and get set up, that's never a place you want to be, especially right now.
Not exactly at all, as we do see Predator and the rest of their team just facing off against this boss NPC so that they can get mythic loot that they are looking for. Change perspectives this time. MJ on G Fuel surviving towards the end for Filippo Berry with the way that they were performing last time. Pretty solidly for them. We didn't really see them too much in that first round, so just trying to make the most of it afterwards. And they don't really have anyone near them by Shady Silt, so they're just going to have this entire area to themselves.
Completely on their lonesome here, and definitely set up potentially for their success of Filippo Berry and Shady Stilts. Not something that has been contested, and not something that I think will be. It is on the edge of the storm as it currently stands. Actually, we could actually take a look at the map right now, get a chance to see exactly where that first storm is heading and where it is actually cutting off, because as we check in with Shady Stilts, yeah, you've got a huge chunk here, and really nothing. But guaranteed, just as I do that, I'm glad we checked this out. There is a squad on the north side who may be making their impacts.
That's very true. We'll have to see exactly if they face off against each other soon, or if they're luckily going to avoid each other so that they both can survive till a little bit later on. That squad on the north side, keeping an eye out for MJ on G Fuel, looking around just to see if they can spot anyone. Rocking the Laura Croft skin. I respect it.
I was about to say, just barely missing out on this squad. Literally just came through Shady and now looted the whole area. And another. I feel like there is not much space to be starting on the north side of that map above this POI. So I'm a little curious in terms of where they are set up and looted, and especially if you're a squad that's roaming through this, you should realize that this has
they're going to run straight into him. You'd think so at this point, or they're just really looking for a conflict. This is 20th if any of these teams go out here. All three of them eventually ending up. And Kizlock is one of the teams, okay, that is facing off against someone here. Justin, Crazed. We saw this team do pretty decent. Crazed actually in the end. Last for so long, and there they go down.
And mind you, this is another squad that we see Myers Park just finishing off here. Was the potential opportunity for our friends between Panzer and Kizlock to work their way back in for Audrey Kell here. And they do spot out Dale Boss, and Crazed also not much better themselves. The blast coming through from the rocket is something that will drop them down. Dale eliminated, and Crazed not looking much better themselves, sitting on only the 50 health remaining here. Oh, and Rusty Golem sniped out by Panzer. I mean, this could not be more perfect of a drop.
Oh, Crazed somehow able to get away, though, at the end of it. Perfect timing on that rotation. The rest of them chasing them down, but Crazed waiting for the cooldown on the Witch's Broom to get away as we tune in to MJ on G Fuel yet again for this Filippo Berry team, who's going to fight themselves with the Swifty squad as they are able to knock them down completely and go for the eliminations here. I think one of them did manage to escape, though, as they didn't get the full squad wipe just yet as they got the knockdowns.
Doesn't look too good here. Kexi dropped. MJ on G Fuel, now the last remaining member at what I believe is a heavy numbers disadvantage. Ramen on one hand, Jacked on the other. They've broken into the box. And that will be it for Filippo Berry after such a high placement last game.
Oh no, 18th is where they will go out there. We also see Caleb Big City getting knocked too. So I think Evan's down as well. And that was the Garinger team, if I'm not mistaken. No, not the Garinger team. That was a different squad. That was Mallard Creek who goes down there.
I don't know if they're completely eliminated yet.
They still have one player.
Even still, Mallard Creek was a huge resurgence from them, at least in some of our initial games here. I believe the second place in game one there.
Yep.
So already facing some of those early knocks, a big deficit. Now, granted, with Ramen, Swifty, Line, and Jack, they need to take the time to get themselves put back together for Huff, as looking for that reboot bus. Definitely the next thing. We do see Evan pop back up on that feed, by the way.
That would do. Alibi also getting involved in the elimination gang here. As we see Butler Team A.
There's Cryptic. There's
Alibi.
Alibi.
Doing everything that they can to rack up those eliminations since they missed out in round one. They are here to play and secure their spot into the top four and seeming to be the most consistent so far.
Hey, it's something you can do really, really quick if you set your mind to it. Toji My King also picking that up is a great setup. And mind you, we even get a little peek from Providence's Team B. There's Coneyfish. That was that rat surviving up into 4th place in our last match there. So seeing the elimination is also good, as finally we will see Huff stick this one out, get the reboot Swifty back into the game. Now granted, we know Creaky Complex has been contested. They've got to be careful right behind them, a team that could see this here.
So close, just moments notice for that other team to spot them and try to take them out. They actually can see them right there, and Ramen just didn't notice them somehow. They're in the bushes, staring right at them. Why aren't they attacking?
Providence's Team A here, as silent as a mouse, hiding within the bushes, just barely able to see them. And that doesn't even give context to the team that happens to reside apparently just above them here on this cliffside, and anyone else who is also contesting in the Creaky. You can see Toji not too far away here. I believe that one. Also, Butler on the opposite side. And oh, look at that. OKKK BF in more. This once again.
Derringer. The full Garinger squad. Now we do see Swifty moving forward here, and eventually we're going to see something. No! We move from the action. Come on, spectator.
Jacked with that one. We'll get at least those first 2 knocks with the follow through, and hopefully we'll jump back over. And it does seem like they were successful on the wipe. I don't see any other, maybe potentially one on the additional escape there as well. Even though with those noises, it does seem like Garinger doesn't get involved. They keep themselves on hype, but I mean, it's as close as one could expect here.
Hugh and Garinger just on opposite sides of this pathway as they are trying to move out of the storm. Not really focused on each other, just focused on the rotation so that they can both survive towards the late game, because they did not have the placements that they were hoping for in that last round. They both need to put the pedal to the metal as far as eliminations go and everything else. So I think eventually once the storm stabilizes and they get into that next storm zone, they're going to be facing off against each other just because, and you already see it happen here. Swifty taken down by Breezy. Jack and B trying to see what they can do here too, but not in a good position. And they're going to have to try and do whatever they can to get away from the squad, because it feels like it's just going to be a matter of time for Garinger to get the elimination onto Huff here.
Huff is being tracked out. Breezy now on that low ground. Has to be careful as Jacked and Line Crew know they are at potentially that numbers advantage. It is a great shockwave grenade, though, to put Breezy back up. But the fall through with the broom is almost immediately here. Breezy sliding to the low ground, just barely able to get the defense back up as OKKBF also arriving. Finally, we start to see the shots return back onto Jacked. And I'll tell you what, it is barely a presence on this low ground that we are able to see Garinger hold on to. Ramen is looking for that next access point, but they are starting to lose it.
And Breezy is separating from the other 3 players on their squad just so that they can find an exit route and not get trapped in this area. I think that's a wise decision from them, just to try and get away from the scenario that they have found themselves in. But another team coming into the fray potentially as well, as we are in a dangerous situation between these teams in the Rumble Ruins, as they are facing off against each other in said ruins here. Having to deal with some NPCs getting involved in the action too, but it has seemed to be fizzled out between these teams, as we do see Midi, Rohan, and them trying to push forward and see if they can third party this fight.
Hopewell right here just above Garinger and Huff. Huff, I believe, able to escape out there towards that other side, taking the time successfully to re-evaluate that position. Were able to find at least, oh no, my apologies, Garinger able to find their way on the outside. Huff here still stuck on the interior. Hopewell taking this though very, very slow. Finally, it is Ramen that is caught out, but it isn't the wipe.
Not just yet, but Ramen no shield to work with, and there is a knock from their one player who got overzealous and a bit too greedy to push in and felt the music there. Now they're just going to be taking up all of the items from that player. Lion trying to see if they can push forward themselves and take them while they are retreating from the storm. They are getting a couple shots on, but they're also getting shot and shield down themselves. Only 50 HP, having to heal up in some capacity with the pizza, and it's only going to do so much. We do see Midi doing everything that they can. The window popped open with the shots coming out too. The ramp is going to help a little bit with some barrier there, but the control of the wall is not in the favor of Lion. Only 7 HP ticking down here as
Oh
well.
my gosh.
Mix of the pizza, some damage coming through yet again, but Midi has the advantage. Just needs one good shot, and the Storm, it feels like it's just going to kill Lion here, and there goes the knock, and there goes Lion. The rest of their team still has a chance to escape if Ramen can rotate around fast enough. They might be greedy to try and take down Midi on this play. They have a good potential, but they're pretty even as far as total health goes in this fight, and the Storm is going to keep ticking down both of their healths.
Ramen here looking for an access point out, forced to deal with the edit that Midi has in hand here, now successfully on that angle. Rocket available. This is what won the fight off there just moments ago. And Ramen,
run, yeah,
as I say, he understands the situation at hand here and opts to get out of it before it becomes a problem. Midi now at full shielding will look for that next rotation forward, and it is a success for Hope, but technically a squad that is a squad that is still stuck in Storm here. They are not completely secure.
Not a good spot to find yourself in, to say the least here. We also see Carlitos, we mentioned them before, getting in a bad situation for their team last go around with one of the Garinger B teams. So Garinger A escaped, Garinger B on the horizon. Now we're just going to be riding around in the pizza pit as we see Savage Ninja, Panzer, and Kizlock. Kizlock who got taken down somehow on top of the floating island.
Wait. And Crazed here in Myers Park, they are back. Remember, it was the start of this game that Rusty Golem, Dale, and them were all wiped out. Crazed takes to the sky and successfully was able to get the entire.
We were wondering about that, yeah.
Wow.
Myers Park, what a clutch play from Crazed on that. But look at all of the players rotating. I mean, having the extra health from the car is definitely going to help them survive if any team tries to engage upon them, excuse me. As Panzer, you do see in the rear view mirror now, not focusing too much on targeting this car that's just got so much going for them. Yeah, they're just going to be driving, and Kizlock apparently did lag out. That's where we saw the quote-unquote elimination come out there. So unfortunate for that team. It's Kizlock, one of the main fraggers or really players that are able to just go for all the eliminations for that team.
Well, bit of a shame there, but still finding their success in the face of Panzer. Double knock drops, 15 with the Storm ticking, needs to find some kind of help, some kind of refresh, or just fight their way in. Able to get on just 5 HP here, looking for those edits out through the outside. And sadly, I believe that is said and done there for the roster. I know it was a full wipe, but I believe Kizlock being on the disconnect causing that bug there. In the end for Audrey Cal, they still at least make it, well, at least to 11. I was gonna say top 11. Terrible. Out of the lobby, it is literally on the direct halfway point.
Wait, Midi somehow came through after that fight we saw before, taking down Lion eventually. That Lion was trying to escape way back when, so interesting fights that are happening across the way for Huff Team C, who really just were in a bad spot while they were in the ruins. But Alibi and the team that we saw win it last go around with Butler Team A, the Butler Bulldogs, I'm assuming, just based on their logo there, doing everything that they can to rough up the competition. Deadside, the solo player, escaping at the perfect moment, noticing exactly when they were going for the shockwave grenades and the witch's brooms, and used that timing to run away. But they got sniped out by someone else, and I think that was the Chicken OP and Slushy.
Yeah, I was about to say Huff's Team A here on that opposing side makes it so that you can't exactly have Butler move entirely for that elimination. So Butler really just sets them up for a very, very easy extra 2 points there. Still, though, it is a dangerous, dangerous squad to still have here within the last 10 or so squads remaining. And they do have the advantage currently in this upcoming Storm. They don't have to make the major move here across the Relentless Retreat. They don't have to cross that water, which for a team like Garinger, even though we know they are capable of winning it all just as much, will have to do so here shortly.
Not as many eliminations as we saw in that first round. A reminder to everyone who might have missed round one, they had 22 eliminations. No one has eclipsed that just yet. As far as totals in the southern region that we are, the southern region that we are watching today. Western was yesterday, excuse me. But on top of this relentless retreat, it's really going to come down to timing for the rotation. As you can see, opposite side from the new Storm Shrink. That's going to be annoying to deal with, especially depending on who is going to be looking at them at whatever moment. So really is going to come down to timing for this team. Otherwise, they might go out in top 5, not even getting close to that top 3.
Well, it looks like it is a successful drop there from Huff on Team A, focusing out Momo Craft, the full wipe, rewarded to the Chicken OP, and I believe taking advantage of, I believe, just barely some control there over on the edge that they were able to have out. And now taking advantage of the building entirely just across from Butler. We're down to our final 5 squads remaining. I believe 4 of them roughly full, with one as a pseudo duo or potentially trio there. That you might be able to see actually there, very distant behind the house line.
That we do see on this one, Huff Team A looking right across the way from Butler Team A, just wondering exactly when the best time is to rotate. As you can see, the Storm going the other direction, really favoring this Huff Team A if they're positioning, but it's going to depend on the teams behind them. As you do see that Garinger squad we talked about, who got the first victory royale. So the 2 teams who've gotten victory royales before, about to come to a head here with this top 3, top 4 scenario. I do believe there might still be a single rat somewhere across the board, but they are taking their time and trying to hide away and not really worry about anything. Actually, 2 rats potentially, because still a couple other squads that we saw.
Well, right off the bat, it is Garinger, and they are successful, I believe, in their first wipe. We'll see if they can pick up potentially the remnants of that roster that they have started their success up against. Craze, though, the final member of Myers Park finally
lasted
picked
so
off
long. I think it's the second time we've seen Craze last all the way towards that top 5, top 4. Yep, so kudos to them for their team with placement, at least. Maybe not eliminations, but I think we did see Craze get decent eliminations here and there. We do see Midi and their squad still alive as best as they can be, as they were able to escape the ruins before and got that win in the solo fight with the timing that we saw from them. So some good awareness from this team, but we do need a little bit more from them if they want to take out any of those top 3 contenders that we've been talking about.
Garinger here right on top of Butler. You've got to be careful. OKK, BF, and King Ken already landing down. Alibi looking low as a result alongside Toji. It is still, though, a numeral split here with Breezy and Fable just barely arriving in time. They've got to take themselves into a little bit of respite. Get some heals back up. They are, I believe, down a full member here. Now, granted, though, Garinger drawing a lot of attention to themselves here over in this fight. Toji, my king, not looking much better themselves, taking the skies. That's as risky as it gets, surprisingly. Still left breathing, as can't say the same for Breezy.
Breezy is not going to be able to do much. Actually, they have 1 HP and they took down Alibi instead. It looked like they were gone. Maybe the Storm might take them out in a second. Limit Cryptic getting chunked by the Storm too. They need to get out of there for a second. Zalka's taken down. Brandy X also taken down too. Looks like 1 player is still remaining for Zalka's team. So I think it was Midi that was still with that squad somewhere along the way, keeping that team in this fight. But Toji trying to do whatever they can to see if they can get a heal off in time. Really more just keeping an eye on the situation for their team, as the Garinger squad, who was taken out so early in the last game, really has had a resurgence this time.
Toji is officially eliminated, and we are down to some of the final competitors. Rohan, that last remaining member, alongside Midi. Is Limit Cryptic just as well, actually. My apologies.
Rohan trying to take out Limit Cryptic.
Yeah, it is up here. Slushy missed in the Chicken OP. We talked about their early exchanges in some of these rounds, and they are still yet alive here.
Trying to stay alive as best they can. Limit Cryptic, though, here with the blade, trying to just use that for mobility more than anything else to get a better spot with the rotation of this zone. They are just going to take their time, survive as best they can for their squad, but they had a victory royale last time. It doesn't seem like it's going to be as easy this go around unless there is some mishaps along the way from this Garinger team, who has, I think, all 4 of their players still up. Slushy missed, is taken down a little bit. Chicken OP looking for something here. We did have 1 straggler. Breezy was able to take out. King Ken looking for an angle themselves.
just barely. OKKBF able to find their height back, but Favel likely to go down in the storm.
Down.
That's actually 2 now
down.
out for
Slushy's
Garinger.
down too.
Slushy, though, it is now the solo for Chicken OP,
Chicken's out
but
too.
taken out from King Ken on height. Limit Cryptic, surprisingly,
1v2.
able to survive against it. Like you said, 1v2, but none of the height to boot. None of the
chunking so
builds
much.
for Limit Cryptic. Has no builds to work with, trying to play off the tree line.
Ooh.
But when you've got no cover, there's nothing for you to work with. Congratulations here to Breezy King Ken, as officially Garinger, I believe,
Second win for
game.
That it is. They got the first round, went out a little bit early in round 2, and now round 3, they were able to have a bit of a resurgence. And
Wow.
we talked about this. The team who typically gets the first victory royale has made it every single time. Not typically, every time has happened. So now we see another victory royale, and they are cementing themselves even more so in the top 4. That was round 3, mind you. Only 2 more to go.
It may not be the most consistent, but at the end of the day, when you're picking up double wins on the board, that is a happy and very easy 60 points to work with. We have yet to have a scoreline, I think, eclipse 300. So if you're already breaching a third of that number between your eliminations and placement, it is a very good spot to be, especially for that round 3 and further.
That it is. Well, talking about round 3 and further, more round 4 and 5. We still have it 2 more to go here for the VESL Fortnite Regional, the final one out of the 4 that we have gone through this week. We take it a quick break, then after that, we have round 4 ahead of us. 2 more rounds to go for the final day of VESL Fortnite Regionals competition. Vaudeville, Zephyr, and it's heating up here on the island for these Fortnite matches as Garinger got their second win after a rough performance in round 2, but we also saw some great work from individual players across the board, surviving as long as they could. So once we get to those stats and everything sorted out, we'll get you all the picture of the top 4 teams that are currently in the running for making it to that state final.
It is still close. I know Garinger is on that double win lead, but we know for a fact that no matter when it has come down to a major leading entity, it is so clear that the rest of these rosters can find themselves in tiebreaker situations or constantly competing for that upper 4th, 3rd, 2nd slot all the way until that final and 5th round here. So we are at the best situation. It is not the 5th round. It is the 4th round. It is our penultimate game. You still have the opportunity to say, I don't have to go into the 5th round with that level of stress. I can come through with these eliminations and I can pick up a victory royale that should cement me as a competitor.
That's what we need to see from a lot of these teams here. Kizlock as well. We saw some decent performances, but disconnect and internet issues, unfortunately, weren't in their favor there. So already, BBC Spark, Carlitos, Mailbox, I mean, doing what they can to start things off with some eliminations here and fighting tooth and nail with 2 different teams we see.
Already right off the bat, is locking them so close here, taking height on the other side. Have to be careful. Obviously, Slappy Shores being expended as well. Granted, key in their presence, which is more important here for the long run. Huge shout out, though, to O'Barry, MGA on G Fuel, already finding drops. Slushy missed as well in that feed.
Ooh, Garinger Team B having a bit of a struggle too. Midi taken down by What You Do in Sosa on that play. Limit Cryptic too is going to be knocked as well. Limit Cryptic was from that one team that we were talking about last go around that have been performing pretty good since the 2nd round. Butler, Team A. So some interesting results happening so far with these knocks and these early fights. And speaking of fights, play, kill, and win. Looking to try and wipe this duo out here. They're somehow avoiding for a second, but not long enough. Carlitos and company from, I think that is the Hugh or the Huff Team B will be taken out there.
Taking their time almost immediately. Play, kill, and win.
Team B, excuse me.
Wakeville. One of the first times we've ever gotten the opportunity to see this.
Good win for them to take out that Garinger Team B, who have had a bit of a struggle, and it's the Garinger Team C who took out Garinger Team B. It's the interesting thing. So Garinger on Garinger violence is what we just witnessed here. Swifty doing what they can to bring their teammate back up, but interesting situation here in Slappy Shores as they are just trying to take the semi-truck away and use that to just escape from here. You can see one player knocked down already. QT trying to get away as well, but Kizlock just has them locked in their sights and gutting them down as best they can. Not really too much these players can do here.
Not the best in this end, but Kizlock seconds away on the edge of a door. Blast will stunt things for a moment as, yes, shots are being had as a small recovery is found, and it is not entirely in the face, and it's going to take a broom back to get the bearings here before all goes awry. It was none other than Clapped on the other side. Thankfully, it takes Panzer. Panzer coming through from the off angle to finish the job there. Kizlock is nothing but, we'll say, a glorified distraction on that front to give Panzer the access here on Audrey Cal.
Perfect timing too, because Huff Team B that we just saw facing off against Kizlock were so close to taking them down and potentially eliminating this player, but the other 2 that were still alive had a chance to finish things off. Savage with barely any HP towards the ends of things there. We also saw in the feed, I believe it was Garinger Team A getting an elimination on Rohan, who lasted all the way towards the end of the top 4 last time. So big elimination there, but I don't believe it was a full squad wipe just yet. So still plenty of competition to be had by that team.
Off of the bat, though, now on a successful recovery, at least in terms of getting themselves looted up. But I'll tell you what, we talk about that feed, and it is a name that we saw very early on today successfully. Kexi and crew starting to set themselves up there. Not the same can be said, though, for Charlotte's virtual team facing their own difficulties. And look at this. It was Kirosaki that we talk about against Slushy and Chicken OP in this last round in their 1v1s. They've already found 4 eliminations, but now they must defend against another.
Garinger Team C, I think, also fully eliminated there as well, as you saw on the feed. Eminem's wife taken down here too in that trio that we were mentioning. One of the great names that is out there competing in the competition here, but so many eliminations, 49 players already remaining at the start of round 4, where it took much more time the last go around for these eliminations to happen. And what you do in Sosa, Lion also having some difficulties here too. These players facing the music so early on. Trooper looking pretty good against Lion and the rest of those players.
Already
That's
right
on
off the
Huff
bat
Team
here.
C.
Yeah, taking their time. Huff Team C, and Spark down as well now. Coming
I think
through,
that's fully eliminated too.
Yeah, might be completely it there. We'll have to see. It's not a place you want to be in your last moments. Meanwhile, KKP chasing from one box to another here. Kirosaki literally left with a fraction of seconds behind them. King Ken right there to deliver that final blow. And for Garinger, they're feeling good after their another win and potentially now look to do a third. Granted, a huge shout out once again to Kirosaki and that roster. It has been, I will say, an actually very good fighting squad. They've just been unlucky on their timings.
That's to say the least, especially facing off against the team who's been able to pull off a complete victory twice in a row for those victory royales in round 1 and in round 3. Not the best performance in round 2, but they just weren't in a good position when it came to loot and rotations from the Storm closing in, but they've been taking their time this go around, rotating and just taking individual team fights along the way, and that's been huge for them to secure even more so of a lead when it comes to this top 4 standing.
Brutal Bastion here, maybe a bit quieter in comparison to some of the other action that we have seen. And once again, Crazed, Rusty, Dale coming through here from Myers Park have been a presence in some of these later games. We've been left kind of seeking out exactly where this scoreline is, because this could be one of those teams that might just be on the hair or the cusp of action, right? We've seen them show up in our top 2 twice before, and last game alone, we're starting to rack up those eliminations. A consistent gameplay between this 4th, 5th game could be enough to send them to the state finals.
You also saw on the feed that Alibi was taken down a little bit there too, and Slushy missed, and Johnny Bravo from Huff Team A. So that whole squad not looking good, might be fully eliminated now. Yes, they are, because as soon as that player went down, 13 instead of 14 squads were remaining. So Huff Team A, who's looked pretty decent for the most part, eliminated in 14th, and Alibi from Butler Team A struggling for their squad too.
Meanwhile, it is going to be the time for Philip O'Barry to recover after that elimination. Just across from them, not far off here, is the potential fight between them and Garinger. Remember, Philip O'Barry, I believe, one of the few rosters to make it to the top end of our second lobby. But nothing
So
is
many
sighted out
teams here.
yet. They're very close, but they haven't spotted them. I believe because their traction is tailing north, they actually lose out on seeing, for now, Marcel Log not an assistant to this roster. Instead, someone to potentially be taken out here.
Not a good spot for Marcel Log either. I think he is the solo member remaining for West Charlotte Team A, who we haven't really talked about much at all. I think Marcel Log might just be a solo player for them at the most part, and they are facing off against someone else. They actually did manage to down Skulls, so taking out one of those players who were just separated from the rest of their teammates who are looting, as you can see, all spread out with those orange cursors on the left side of the minimap. And now this team, MJ on G Fuel and the rest of the Philip O'Barry, moving in to see exactly where the other teams that might be trying to take them down are at.
trying to see if they can get a good angle here, losing out a little bit on exactly what they went originally out to hunt for. Instead, they find Providence Team B just below them. Getting the recovery, though, on Naps is important as Providence bites back. Coney with that drop on the Naps is critical here, and to be honest, forces this to be a bit of a delayed action now.
I think we also see one of the Huff teams yet again with that user. No, it's Audrey Kell, who are getting some eliminations for themselves too in the feed. Finally getting involved in the action. We hadn't really seen much from that squad so far to start things off in round 4, where they didn't have the best performance that they were looking for last time, so they definitely need to make up for it this go around. And really, it's going to come down to when that next Storm Eye shrinks fully and the next circle is revealed to everyone for a big team fight to happen. But there might be one going down here in just a second between Garinger and this this squad of Filippo Berry.
MJ right above. This is what we've been waiting to see between the two. Garinger might be on their way out as Breezy is tussled from 2 angles. Kios tied that initial box, but it is going to be the trade, though, on the upper end. OKKBF finding the double knock drop onto 2. Now it is literally left up to MJ, well, to face their end there. What looked like an excellent start is nothing but yet capitalized on. I don't even know if Fable was actually in that fight. It looked so clean, especially for OKKBF. I mean, getting the drop early there on 2.
That's unfortunate for the side of Filippo Berry, because MJ on G Fuel, you could tell, most confident player on that team. That's the one who survived the longest for that squad as well. It just took them too long to get into the box to try and at least get elimination. They got a knock, but they couldn't get really focused enough because there were so many players surrounding them, and now all of them looted up and ready to try and face off against this other duo that's on the horizon.
On the other side,
Myers Park
and Dale's Bar. Well, I don't know if they'll last much longer if they are found out. Taking these shots is as risky as it gets, especially as a duo. Dale Boss is, to no surprise, dropped immediately. And while Craze has been good at making these recoveries,
not this time.
I can't imagine the full stack of 4 is going to be something you can walk away from here. Craze sitting on but 50 and but now nothing for the rest of Myers Park.
There goes Myers Park down the drain, and now have to just look at the spectating feed as best as they can. But Panzer, we do see their team moving forward here for Audrey Kell that we talked about before, trying to get involved a little bit earlier on, but might be too early to face off against this team. They see King Ken. They are going to get some snipes off on FabVLTG, and Breezy and OKKBF. If they can get a good knock here and then move in from there, that'd be huge for them. But they don't want to push in it too early because we've seen the power of this squad, who's still #1 on the leaderboards.
Now tuning back over to a race that has been maybe a little bit more quiet. Audrey Kell, albeit at 6 eliminations, still looking. I love the scoped AR here, able to find just a little bit of the tracking thermal, but a bit of a separation. Savage Nima so far behind, you have to be careful. A team like Garinger is so close and always one of the most aggressive in terms of locking down individuals that are caught out here. And I'm seeing 4 that could be very well taken advantage of. But I think pressuring angles from multiple sides forces Garinger to make opposite decisions.
Makes a lot of sense for them to back off on this play. I think they picked up a motorcycle too, so that they could just get away even faster. And they're all just rotating away from each other, even taking a rift into the sky. There was another team coming from the north too, towards Audrey Kell, so that they had to try and see if they could deal with them. But they also noticed Garinger, they don't really want to deal with that team whatsoever right now. So just taking their time, seeing if there's anyone else that's near them, but they're still in a decent spot in this current circle, so they don't really have to worry about the storm shrinking. They have so much time, as you can see on the screen, counting down here. So just going to pick up some more loot, maybe some more builds along the way would be a good thing too, or just more ammo also helps out as well for Panzer, who's really been, them and Kizlock, the main fraggers, or I'd say probably Kizlock is the IGL for this team, just based on the way that they follow around Kizlock most of the time.
Taking their time here will pull away to Garinger as they set up for at least some minor loot above the island. While it is just a little bit, what's more important is the positioning. This is something that will give them a bit more control, even now going into that 6th storm as well for the remnants of this game here. Now, granted, will be forced to drop down, and how they disengage from this situation is something to discuss in the future here, but it could be something that allows them at least to outlast 2 or 3 squads in terms of placement, and maybe even get some good angles like this onto Strip 5.
And that player was just looking for the reboot, Van. You could tell that they were trying to see if there would be a moment that this team would rotate away, but Garinger, they are holding on to this position. They know that there's a couple players that might be coming in from outside the zone, as that is what's happening. It is the Swifty squad again, as they are trying to rotate in themselves, but they haven't really been too successful in these last couple of rounds for lasting as long as they would hope to. That's Huff Team C, by the way, over there, just on the outskirts of this floating island, looking for any moment to get away. And you see KBF engaging here, or more just rotating so that they can get a better angle to just dissect them in a pincer maneuver from both sides of the island, but also the other direction. Dangerous, though, as they are on this rotation all the way over to Brutal Bastion.
Taking their time here. They will take their time here. They've got all of it in the world as they make their way down. But separated, you have to be careful. We do see a bit of a split on the edge of the storm towards that eastern. I like the fact that they are targeting the height here coming out of this compound. They aren't just set up within the island then looking to go to the next step forward. They're trying to get an advantage towards the northern side where they know most teams will be caught out below on that low ground there. Mind you, in the meanwhile, King Ken getting the full secured elimination, by the way, this entire time.
Took a little bit of time, but they were able to get that there for their team. So now on the rotation, you see Kizlock below them. Dangerous position for them. They got a bit more information on this team that they faced off against earlier on. So now we might see another engagement between these two squads where Huff and Garinger, who lasted so long in the first round, now will face off against each other in the snowy tundra.
Huh. Taking their time here on the edge. Garinger still has that height, that early setup that I talk about, and as a result, Panzer and Kizlock are immediately blasted from this initial engagement. And while they will be able to recover, it is a huge chunk of the resources forced to invest in. Breezer drops down. Panzer is eliminated, and now a 2v4 situation for User and Kizlock here, looking for an escape on the exterior. But you have to realize they are always closing in, always on height, and always looking for that next move. Breezy, King Ken, all on the slight recovery here. Not much of an angle for Kizlock and User work with. The real question, though, that being, where is Savage Ninja? Where do you come into play here to support this one out? Currently heavily separated in terms of distance.
Garinger also, I think, are facing some shots from another team across the way, so that is giving some room to work with. Both these teams, I think they're adamant on just sitting in their boxes, waiting for other members of different squads to come through and maybe pick them off one by one, because they know that they have a rat in the trap right below them and they don't need to worry too much about them so far with the way that they've been able to dissect so many different squads leading up to this point in time. But decent elimination total for this team of Ardrikel, the way that they've been performing up to this point. And now they have the high ground after the rotation out from the other Garinger team. Garinger might have just thought that they were gone and rotated away and just were nonchalant too much about it. And Breezy could have been taken down here if they focused on him a bit more.
Coming through here, opposite side. Like you said, good shots right there, and it is going to be forcing rotations. But remember, it is these rotations that have set up the win for Garinger in the long haul here. Losing out on Panzer is just the first part of the first battle of the multi-stage war here. You might not eliminate the entirety here, but as you set up and find them on the next source of height, how do you eclipse that for the future? How do you make that exchange as you look for your next position?
It's going to be a tough task to fulfill, to say the least. So we do see Providence Team B rotating in with Coneyfish in the action there. just in the middle of everything. And you could definitely tell that Garinger is that team creating the height on the opposite end of the storm circle. We're only 7 out of 12 for it to close in even more so as this game, or this round 4 has progressed between these teams. Is still 9 teams remain and 22 players with how small of a circle we are getting to just now.
Mind you, Huff's Team C is actually still in it. As I say that, they face a bit of a difficulty with King Ken finding that knock on to Swifty. A little bit on the separation there, but definitely a roster that we saw have their big successes in our early games, but taking the time. Mind you, Providence B literally right there just across from them, the last remaining member of Coneyfish, a single box away, as yes, Huff going to lose out completely on Swifty here.
Taking their time, battening down the hatches, waiting for this storm circle to close in and see where it's going to move from there. Because once things move, that is where the eliminations will come out. Confident positioning here from Garinger, as always, because they have the high ground. They have all the angles they need. They can move wherever they really need to as well. You can see the stragglers of a couple of different squads here and there.
Just completely, by the way, completely solo down there, just looking for the off angle to potentially just get like
an elimination.
Wipe.
Yeah.
You know how much like confidence you have to have in your 1v1 potential.
All the confidence.
Literally, you have to genuinely think it's like no
he
slight
is him.
work. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's even if it isn't a full roster, right? Like you have to go in with the assumption that it is, and you're still moving in like a 4v1 there. Either way. Garinger's starting to move forward. It seems like the zone to pull back here, and it's going to land them right above Beastly Tanner and Crazy Gendero here.
And that's a squad we really haven't seen too much out of so far leading into this point, and that's Providence Team A. We've seen Providence Team B, but Providence Team A really are having the toughest battle that they've had so far in this competition, and they weren't able to do much. Just completely eliminated. I mean, we didn't even, it was so quick that the spectator feed didn't update for us with their health totals. Oh, Coneyfish, what are you doing?
All right. Well,
it's a sacrifice, I guess, in Coneyfish, trying to feel confident and take on a full team.
At the end of the day,
it worked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it still is successfully in it here. I will say a good chunk of these rosters just there as well. Garinger now clearly the dominant factor. I will give a handout to the duo trios that we currently have in. Yes, duo trios here. It has been the second time that we've gotten the opportunity to see Mallard Creek make it towards one of these end games. Losing out now, as we already know, on the one end, taking their time on the front end of this build as it currently stands, and 4 left. On the other hand, it is going to be Hugh Team C, who lose out on their one Swifty. We saw that from the early pickup in Ken very much at the beginning. Meanwhile, it is the first focus here. Mallard, as they're on their way out. Evan taken down. Predator towards this other side will find their safety as this solo and final member, but sits at only 34 health here. King Ken has been known for the sniping potential, and I can only imagine it gets worse here.
From Providence Team B as well has been surviving so long.
Look,
I think they also picked up an elimination too. Jacketed B taken down there. Breezy somehow was up for a second. Lions down as well. So many people getting knocked by the storm at this point in time, and Coneyfish is just going to be racking up those placements as best they can. If they can take down Predator, this would be huge for them, but they are just going to be focusing on these rotations, keeping out of the eyes of the storm, but also the eyes of Garinger, who are just hungry for taking down the Predator here. Okay, KBF is looking for that finish on the Predator, who has no heals remaining, just some mini pots themselves. They have a lot of builds, and King Ken taken down too.
King Ken's dropped in the midst of the Coneyfish action and was literally seconds away of ratting into second there. Now a 2v1 situation. Predator, though, sitting on 38 builds remaining. That could be good. The minis are good, but doesn't have the setup to start that one off. And it is okay, BF, that takes it away.
3 wins now for Garinger Team A. You see the emotes coming out. I mean, 10 eliminations, 2 from OKKBF, 10 from King Ken, and 7 from Breezy. That is the most we have seen so far today at 27 for their team. Congrats for that. They are in top 4. They're not gonna lose
They-
top 4.
they
They've had all
are
the eliminations.
Probably.
I mean, we don't need to like doubt it at all. We don't even need all the results. They are moving to state finals like at this point. There is no way possibly going into round 5 that they couldn't.
I guarantee you they're probably in first right now. At
Yeah.
this point, while I would put my money on Garinger, UC, and Audrey Cal. And I will confirm behind the scenes, we are slowly getting those leaderboards. We are almost caught back up to full, and we might have them available after our 5th and final round. But if you don't know the scores, all that counts is making that last lobby as good as possible. This has been a very tempered lobby, I will say. We
Yeah.
have seen some incredible performances, some 30-plus elimination games, some matches go up past almost so close shying 300 points here. So if they're capable, no, y'all are too.
Well, we'll have to see who is capable of joining this team that we were talking about. Garinger with their 3 victory royales so far, and probably over 60 eliminations, I'd have to say, at this point with the performances we have seen from them. So we're going to be taking that final break, tallying things up to this point as we can, and getting into the final round of action for the VESL Fortnite Regionals. It all comes down to this. Round 5 in the 4th and final regional for the VESL Fortnite Regionals. I'm Vaudable. We got Zephyr, and we have a competition on our hands where a couple of teams still trying to vie for those top 4 spots and the final 4 spots into the state finals in February.
I'll tell you what, it has been rough and tough for teams like Huff, but for all of these, no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to start that. I will say it has been a battle for so many of our squads. I will say, though, we do see a slight divot begin to form between our top four. And while we are still waiting on some confirmation for our scores, I do want to highlight a few of these teams. Garinger, we all know, offer their triple win success, but rosters like Butler, of course, Audrey Kell, and Huff Team C, who have made the grain thus far here. Even if you haven't, though, this is probably the closest lobby that we have been in all week long.
Apart from those top 4 teams, for the most part, everyone else is very close, right underneath them, 79 all the way to 63, and we're already seeing some shots coming out from Midi. We were talking about before with them and Rohan. We were probably one of those teams to look out for, popping off for the most part, doing some good work, but still. Oh no, Midi. I was going to say doing some good work, but not that time.
Maybe not this time around. A bit of a struggle there, and even for XZX facing their own issues as they are dropped out. We jump right on over to Kenjutsu Crossing towards the southeastern side, where granted, there are some other teams potentially on that next contest, but arguably maybe not as directly in the action. Still though, Slushy missed here. The Chicken OP. This has been a roster that has been challenged many times for the Huff Team A, but has failed to make it to those end games and is now failing even to make it out of the start, getting assaulted upon already right off the bat, losing off on Brandy.
Not really having enough time to loot up so that they can have all the shields possible and make sure that they can get the resources or even just the ammo necessary to take out this Predator team that we were talking about before. This roster looking pretty good for themselves with Predator on this team of Mallard Creek that they looked really strong in some of the other lobbies before, and now we do see Slushy miss from Huff Team A trying to take them on a peg, and if they can get a shot, that would be it. 1 HP though, missing some shots here and there, only has 2 bullets left, uses one to drop one down, but they need to go for the elimination to at least get some ammo or something to work with. There we go. They do get an AR, and it's not going to really be the best option for them, but now picking up even more loot to work with. It's going to come down to how their teammates are able to clear things up here. Takes down Caleb City as best they can. Predators also in a precarious spot themselves, and if they can take them down, that's a full squad wipe in round 5. And Predator and everyone else on Mallard Creek Team A now having to wait in the lobby to see what their fate is going to be.
And this, like you said beforehand, was a team in that 5th place or on the very cusp of top 4 before we got into this lobby to face their end so early to none other than Huff's Team A, a team that has been struggling through and through, but also they're in 6th, just behind them. You know, for them, that is a huge, huge success, especially if they know exactly who that may be and where those eliminations are landing. But I'll tell you what, Vaughn, you still need to come up big. It is not a set-in-stone victory. Just that one wipe is nice, knowing that you're taking out competition right ahead of you, but finding the massive game, especially for teams that are down there in that 5th and below position, is a necessary fashion, right? I mean, 20 elims plus a win is a guarantee at 70+ points, which is pretty much what some of these squads need, given the fact that that bar, what I like to talk about, that bar is going to raise on so many other rosters. It's getting harder. 15 squads remaining. We're down to 75% of our lobby.
So quickly into round 5 too that these teams are going for those eliminations, trying to hot drop towards another squad, but really the squads that are on top and that are closest to that top 4 are wise enough to not really face off against them. But I talk about that Limit Cryptic from that Butler Team A was taken down early here as well. So Butler Team A, I mean, they've been pretty solid across the board. Didn't have as good of a performance as we would have wanted to see from them in that last round, so they have to be careful not to get knocked out early either.
Yeah, I will say Philippa Berry, by the way, already on their way forward again for themselves, picking up some major eliminations of the feed, so staying just as quick. I like that you point this out, though. 4 plus 4, making 8 on the eliminations. And now, none other than Crazed. Myers Park, the consistent end game fighters, also making it through and through. Rusty Golem is lost, but across from them, another team that has consistently managed to show up, Providence B on the other side. They've got to be a little bit more careful this time. It isn't just Coney. Usually we're used to seeing just Coney in these end games, but you got to pay your respects.
Oh, Crazed is not in a good position. Doesn't have any items to rotate with. Is just going to drop the rocket launcher and give it up to the other team so that they can use those shockwave grenades to keep pursuing or to keep running away from that squad. And hopefully they'll run into all these other teams that are out there. But hopefully this player doesn't run into any of the other players that are in the way. Looking at how many there are on the mini-map too is just a dangerous situation for them. But a lot of those also NPCs still out there that you have to think about. But they did manage to escape for a second, catch their breath, but they also need to time things perfectly for them to rotate away from here, because the longer they take out any rotational items, the easier it is going to be for them to be fully eliminated and their team likely to be out of the competition for top 4.
I will say something to note is the fact that there isn't safety to be found in the rest of Crazed teams here. It was Audrey Kell on the other side also providing angles, and now teams that are chasing Providence B find themselves right in the face of Audrey Kell. So they go from one fight to the next. First, it is taking out Mallard Creek here, or my apologies, Myers Park, and now are on their way potentially to some additional KP. Granted, Crazed, I don't know if he'll be able to the chance to really come back into it, given how heavy the fighting is happening here. You don't get the option to get those cards back.
That's the biggest tough point that they are finding themselves in, is can they have enough time to rotate around? They have to worry about some of these other squads too, Panther as well, or Panzer, excuse me, there too. So a lot of players, a lot of good teams in this area that they have to be wary of if they want to have a chance to pick up those reboot cards and get their players back into it. But maybe just getting a couple eliminations here and there from some stragglers would be a huge pickup for them. At this point in time, just play spoiler to some of the other teams. Yeah. That's always a fun thing to do if you know you might be out of the competition at this point in time. But they're still farming up those mats, staying in the bush, trying to just be a fly on a wall against these teams who are about to go do battle against each other.
It isn't perfect. I mean, Panzer getting knocked out there shows that Audrey Creek facing their issues, even though they got that initial knock onto Skull Kid there. Meanwhile, Butler, team that we have seen in that top 4 consistently, also facing potentially some issues with the full wipe onto Alibi moments ago here. So heavy contesting across the run here, and it goes to show the pressure that some of these teams are feeling. You know, you get into these final moments where you know you need to have a big game to breach that top 4 as close as it is, and it forces you to make some decisions.
And those decisions for most of these teams seem to be, yeah, let's not fight right now because there's still so many teams alive. So they are all diverting course from each other, except for Kizlock, who is still looking for some way to get those reboot cards. And I think they do have some on the deck, and just getting back in position with their teammates is a big thing too, so that they don't have to worry about being caught out and in a bad spot, so their teammate can't get their reboot card and can't get the reboot off for their team. And this is a wise decision for them and user as well to just rotate away from this scenario and go to a different area completely. It seems to be completely uncontested for the most part. Slappy Shores, I think there is one team over there just underneath the Slappy name, or that just might be a POI itself, but nonetheless, solid rotations from these teams as they're taking their time to try and get out of this area. But users taking their time to get to their teammate too, and there might be a one-on-one scenario that's happening as they are trying to vacate.
None other than
Crazed.
The namesake, Geringer's Team A here. It will be the finding of Providence B, and I think that might have been it for Tonyfish and their finals. I don't know if I saw the number drop, but yeah. At their last minute, it's the perfect opportunity. And for Crazed, might be it for them as well here. It is going to be Audrey Kell that moves back in to gather support towards user, more importantly than anything here. Breaking down the wall, getting the edit, and into the box, rushing the assault here. I mean, that is as quick as it gets. And there's a reason I mean, there's a reason Audrey's been on top all day long, Vaughn.
Yeah, with plays like that, sending one person forward to take down the barriers and then the other just using an SMG to spray and pray. As long as you get a couple of shots in, then your teammate who took down the wall initially gets a shotgun blast in. There's no way that a one-person team is going to survive that scenario. So there they go down already into the top 13 in this final lobby as we go into a different fight now. King Ken and the rest of Garinger, who have been on top of the world so far, except that second round, downing one player, looking for another that is out there, but really, they're just here to finish things off.
Very, very tough spot to be here. King Ken, though, able to just, well, I wouldn't say it's a tough spot for them. They're more than happy right now with the full wipe onto Grayish Railroad. It is once again a fabulous start for Garinger and crew. They have been consistently the best performing team here, and while their placement average and their height may not be as peaking as some of our other regions, to pick up, say, that fourth win would put them on the level of teams like New Bern High A or potentially Virtual Academy from yesterday in our Western region.
Virtual Academy only lost one game, and they placed in second with that game that they lost,
Best
which
average.
is the best that we have seen so far, and it won't be eclipsed by this team because we did see a 19th place finish by Garinger Team A in that second round. That is what did them dirty, but they more than made up for it with the eliminations we've seen so far. I mean, 17 was the lowest after that. Last time they did pretty good for themselves, I believe, having like around 27 or so. So they've been doing really good, cemented themselves in the top 4 for sure, and now just going to go for a little bit of a drive.
A little bit of a spin here for the Garinger roster, granted fairly separated. I do have major questions about several others, like Huff. They have been a little bit quiet this time around. That can be good or bad. Another team, though, that has made themselves known through and through is Philip O'Barry's Team A here. They've already found some eliminations early and have consistently been somewhere within that top 6, but for now, need to win. Kios and MB already low, losing both of their shields here.
Ooh, not a good spot to find themselves into. Kios is down themselves, and Envy not in a good spot either. They're just trying to hold on to this and really focusing too much on building when they're not really facing off against too many approaching players. It seems more individuals that are attacking them at this point in time for this squad of Philip O'Barry and MJ on G Fuel, usually the one who seems to be the most skilled on this team, really having a hard time carrying them through this fight. Whereas Kexi can't get through. MJ on G Fuel, speaking of them, is down already. So these players, they need to disengage or else they are going to be going down with the way this fight's been progressing against them.
It's a shame here. I believe this might be that Rocky River team. We'll have to see. Carlitos, though, here, able to get a nice shot on that regard, blasting off with that shockwave grenade. And as a result, Kexi isn't able actually to find that full wipe there in the end. And now has to just slow the pace down. There might actually be multiple squads now getting involved in this one. You can see off in the distance there, 2 other teams also potentially available to assist in the action. One of them being that Huff's Team A, and I believe even further back, potentially, no, I don't know if it's guaranteed. We'll have to see, though. Most of these teams going to be forced to move with the storm, and that'll force action to take place, whether they like it or not.
This is such a dangerous spot for Kexi to be in, and they are just waiting for all these teams to move out of this area so that they can just get out of Dodge as best as they can, because there are so many teams. There's so much traffic going on here. They're picking up some of the scraps that are still available so that they can use that in the storm to heal up a bit with the med miss. Maybe get a shot here too, depending on how they fare against some of the other teams, but Envy somehow also avoided the ire of those squads who were on the prowl for some more eliminations. And Big Fred taken out by the Chicken OP and more teams dropping like flies here and there, but it's been relatively slow even with how many teams are so close to each other.
Now, Kexi was well within the distance to pick up these cards through this match here, and they're actually well within the distance towards Storm, and who better yet than having, say, the like of that, of a med mist on hand to keep this one alive. So I guarantee they get the full reboot back here. We get to get a nice overhead, though, of so many of our teams. The Chicken OP has been successful through and through. Johnny Bravo on the other end, taking a big chunk of damage out of Laser's run there. You can see the Bulldogs not too far away themselves there from Butler. And to be honest, right now it seems like it is all Chicken OP and Team A from Huff there. Kirosaki trying to compete for the height. Literally, just the singular box above there will be an advantage. Johnny Bravo with the broom and the break to come through. Sends them all hurtling down towards the ground, but forces, more notably, teams to rotate than anything.
And that makes
Oh, there's Chicken.
Ooh.
There's Chicken. I was about to say, I was waiting for it.
sense. Waiting for Chicken to pop off there, and that's exactly what we saw happen this go around. Then Slushy Miss and Johnny Bravo will be moving away themselves too, so they don't really have to worry about anything too much on the rotation from that squad that has been looking pretty decent. Butler Team A so far. We do have all of round 3 updated finally. So going into round 4, actually, most of round 4 has been updated. We have our current top 4. So Garinger Team A, then Ardrikel Team A. After that, it's Huff Team C, and then right below them is Butler Team A. 229, 161, 160, and 143, and trailing at 112 is Mallard Creek Team A, who I think we saw eliminated earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, I believe they may have come to their end. It was very, I think a piece of them might have gotten away, but between Evan, Caleb, and Predator, no. Kenjutsu Crossing, yeah, they were wiped out.
Yeah.
They were one of the first teams wiped out in 5th. You're right.
So unfortunately for them, even with the 112 points that they had, because they went down so early, no chance to push into that top 4. Yeah.
It is going to be incredibly close for them if it is the potential case. And granted, I think it will not be at this point. But I won't confirm anything until the very, very end here. Meanwhile, Kexi, MJ on J Fuel, all these screws from our friends on my apologies, Philip O'Berry roster did make their way back in. And as a result, it actually is Garinger who faces at least one knock in this exchange. Granted, still alive and will be potentially in the setup for a revive, but they need to confirm Philip O'Berry, and granted, they're being focused by multiple squads. The one thing that is in their favor, though, VOD, is the fact that Storm, while it is shrinking over the next 30, it doesn't force them to move yet.
That's interesting that there is shots coming on to King Ken too with all the pressure that is happening in this box.
Whoa.
And they've noticed that this team, if they can take down the top dogs, then they don't really have to worry about too many players going into the final 10 and taking them down in 12. I mean, it's still not going to be enough for them to be eliminated or anything, but it would have been a huge win for any of the squads to take down Garinger right at the top.
I think Kexis, though, still gets eliminated. You've got Slushy Mist and the Chicken OP once again moving in there for the Huff Team A to capitalize. And as a result, even though the damage provided on, say, King Ken was so good, it wasn't enough. Now, Breezy is separated on the opposite side here, still looking to make that cross to get back over to Garinger. And one wrong move, we already know for a fact that you have Huff's Team A looking in this direction. So you have to be so careful. A shockwave grenade is apparently what will do it, as they are definitely focused towards northern or southern angles. My apologies.
Makes sense to focus on that too, so that you don't have to worry about anything else while you're on the rotation. We do see a rocket coming out towards Julian Froghead, trying to see if they can do anything to that build, just mess with them a bit. Toji is just chilling, is what we are seeing here for the Butler Team A squad. Keeping an eye on things, trying to keep alive as best they can too, and do all that is necessary for them to stay into the top 4 for Butler, because Butler right on the fringe, 143. They did not place well in that last round, 15th from what we are looking at too. They struggled. So they need to do much better. That is the focus here too. So trying to do all that we can for this team. We are seeing Kizlock and Panzer doing all they can to survive with their squad members that still remain. We've seen them throughout thick and thin up to this point in time, but it all comes down to these final moments with the 8 teams that remain on the board currently. And Breezy, excuse me.
That's what I was talking
Slushy
about.
Mish, that's a huge knock.
I mean, it was a very hard cross to make there, and you can still see it there, actually highlighted on the minimap, that little plus sign. That is Breezy on the other side. Slushy Miss extending out to capitalize and make that happen. And granted, that puts Garinger as a trio for the first time in a while. They are now at a heavy or disadvantage. And this is something well before we really get into some of those final or halfway point of zones. Right now, though, Panzer, Kizlock, Audrey Kell, this is something they've lost out on, at least in Savage Ninja, from moments before. Taking the time to make that cross to the northern side might come with its punishment, but granted, a car is something that, I mean, it doesn't provide much of a threat towards you. I will say that. And the walls behind it, by the way, are incredible. But the minute they get out, Kizlock is there to reap what they sow. That is incredible. The complete northern setup from Kizlock on Audrey Kell here to get the drop on QT. And they're going to go for the revive. And I think they'll be allowed to do so.
Yeah, the storm closing in. They have to all rotate around it too.
Yeah.
So they don't really have a chance to focus in on getting that elimination. Because as the storm continues to close in and further throughout the progression of a lobby, it does more and more health damage. And if you don't have really many health items to work with, it's going to be tough for these players. So now looking at Lion, Swifty, Jacketed B on their rotation. We still see the car in play. Valen, Clap looking for something themselves. Not really much that they can do here either, but Julian Froghead and BBC Spark, who have been around for such a long time as a duo in the end game here. They've just been surviving, struggling, and doing everything they can to claw up the leaderboard as far as standings go from 8th now into 7th, and see how far they can place to try and make it into that top 4. But looking at the squad, I don't know how best their chances are.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. Like you said, the gap is maybe not as wide as some of our other lobbies, but the fact that it has been so spread out makes it hard for so many of these teams to pick up the monumental eliminations that they need to catch up. 6 is decent, right? And it is a nice number to have, but it is nowhere close to that superior 10 or 20 plus amount that you need to be rocking with if you want to walk away with the lead. Audrey Kell being stunted out here will be dropped down, losing out on Panzer right now. It is none other than, I believe, my apologies, OKKBF and the Garinger Team A here. They lost down on Breezy, but they are still picking up elims, and I don't think there is a full squad anywhere now.
No, not at all. It's all just fragmented for the most part for all these teams that remain, and so many players knocked down by the storm just based on their positioning, but also just initial shots that came out. Bad spot for Julian Froghead. And that's going to still be BBC Spark potentially bringing them back up. They're looking for it, and I think they might be able to get that revive just because the storm had been fixed here for just a second. But Lion, looking for the finish, did get some shots out on them, so they couldn't quite go for it just yet, as more shots are coming out from that Garinger Team A.
I can't believe this. Even as a trio, the chaos of this final lobby has allowed them to consistently place through and through. I like this, though. Lion and Jack, they're going to get a very nice refresh under here. But no! Lion is out-edited.
No.
Julian Frog keeps quiet on the other side to make the incredibly quick exchange there on the wall. And they had no idea here. Meanwhile, some issues for Garinger. Fable and OKKBF are both knocked out here. 3 squads remaining at 5 players left. We're talking on 2v1 v2 situations in a storm that I believe just barely doesn't wipe out.
Wow.
Just barely doesn't wipe out Julian.
That is so lucky for Julian, but not lucky enough because King Ken is right behind them, and it might be a matter of time for them to take down Julian Froghead here. BBC Spark looking for something too, so a lot of great players still remaining for this team. Rocky River that has 2 players to work with against King Ken. They're trying to take down at this point in time. It's a 2-on-1 situation. Garinger looking for their 4th victory royale if they can win this. King Ken trying to take down BBC Spark, and Julian Froghead was separated for a second, but King Ken does have the high ground now. They do go down to the storm. BBC Spark, it's a 1-on-1 situation. No shield remaining. King Ken has everything.
He has the builds.
They need the angle, and they do get it. King Ken with a 4th victory for Garinger Team A.
In a turn of odds here, King Ken finds the final victory royale of the day and cements the traditional 4th win here for this roster. Garinger do it again. A 2v1 situation.
Wow.
And a huge mistake there by Julian. Caught out in the storm, trying to use King Ken's own builds to play off a cover. And that's why those refreshes are so important. Getting aggressive is a great source of getting those extra build materials about getting the opportunity in the sense of King Ken to outplay, to have a 2v1 success when you're sitting 38 entire builds above the nearest squad.
Insanity, to say the least there. But of course, we know for sure that Garinger Team A have booked their ticket as the #1 team in the southern region for North Carolina to make it to the state finals in February. But we do need to figure out what the rest of the stats are, what the leaderboards are looking like for the standings of the other 3 teams following them. We know at least the top 4 currently behind them going into this round was Ardrikel Team A. Then we also saw Huff Team C. And after that was Butler Team A. But we saw some early eliminations from some of those squads too. So we really don't know who's exactly in the top 4 just yet. So we're going to be taking our final break here, tallying up the totals for this final round. And then after that, we'll give you the results as we can and figure out exactly who's going to be making it to those state finals after this. we have our final 4 teams who have made it into the state finals. But before we get to that, Zephyr, let's take a little bit of a recap down at memory lane, talking about the teams for each individual regional who will be joining those final 4 teams at the state finals in February. Looking at the Eastern Regional, this is the most dominant performance we've seen from any team. That was the New Bern High Team A, 299 points, 3 first place finishes, and a second place in only 4 rounds with so many eliminations. The least they had was 16, the most out of anyone ever. 33 in that first round. I mean, that's probably a team to look out for, Zephyr.
And it's something that at state finals I would cry if I had to face. And I'll tell you what, for the rest of the Eastern region, it was just as decisive. Southwest Edgecombe, of course, Critucket High, as well as New Bern High's Team B also making it into that top 4 on our first foray into the Fortnite competition.
And I think that's the only B team who had made it in for any of these schools throughout the competition there. Looking at the Central region afterwards, we talked a little bit in the back room behind talking about Panther Creek High and their resurgence after a 15th place finish with 0 eliminations in that first round, then coming out on top over Green Level, who also looked really good and consistent for the most part, just had a rough show up in that second round. Right below them, Holly Springs High, and then Reedsville High, who came out of nowhere for us, but had a lot of eliminations, and that's what set them above the other teams out there just by a bit of a tiebreaker for them.
And then as we jumped over to the Western region, probably one of the most competitive days yet, with a really 2-team centric competition, especially Virtual Academy versus the Cyber Academy. In the end, it was Virtual eking this out with 4 wins and a second place finish, a tie with New Bern High for the best placement, albeit at 293 points. Not quite the same level there. For Cybercats, they miss out on the first round with a 279. Had they played, would have easily dominated in that region. Just behind them, though, wrapping out our 3rd and 4th, Northwest Cabarrus High School, as well as Research Triangle High School at 129 and 115, respectively.
And looking at the Southern Regional that we went through today, these are your 4 final teams making it into that state final in February. And who else at the top but Garinger Team A? We kind of expected to see that with the performance from them, 4 first place finishes, plus a lot of eliminations across the board. Just that round 2 was shaky for them, but they turned it around. And we said it, if you get first place, a victory royale and 22 eliminations in the first round, then you're going to win. And that's what we've seen happen so far. We'll see if that happens in the state finals. Right below them was Huff Team C. Then after that, it was Artie Kell, Team A. And then after that, Butler Team A right below them with 167 points. So not as high of a peak for the number 1 team at this time, but still the consistency was there, and that's what cemented them above the rest.
So those are the official 16 teams that will be joining us as we approach those state finals. But I'll tell you what, they are not happening anytime soon. That'll be at the start of next year. Before that, we've got a plethora of other games here at VESL for y'all, if you want to tune in, or for those who are in high school to compete with. It is not just Fortnite.
We have so many competitions for teams to take part of, and you might see individual dates for all these, but that is a week of qualifiers for the state finals for each of these games. The one that's coming up next in a couple of weeks' time is going to be Overwatch 2. So if you're a big fan of that game, like the changes that have been happening recently, and want to see if you can play against the rest of the competition, definitely take on the world, or mainly just North Carolina, in that matchup. Afterwards, November, we got 2 different competitions, 3 actually. The Super Smash Bros. Tournament at the end of it after Thanksgiving holiday. But we do have Rocket League, Madden, Super Smash Bros., or Smash Ultimate specifically. And then in December, Valorant and Call of Duty, the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. A lot of people have been saying it's pretty good. And if you want to see the action there, make sure you pick up a copy soon and get grinding for those games, because there is going to be so much competition to come for those matches for these VESL high school qualifiers for the state finals in February. But Zephyr, any final words from you before we bid adieu on Fortnite for this week?
It has been a tough week for so many of these competitors, but it isn't the end. I know it is a tough thing to see 16 of these teams walk away, maybe potentially not yourself, but there will always be those future opportunities. And of course, for the 16 that'll be joining us in February, a final congratulations.
Again, congrats to those teams, and make sure you sign up for those competitions. Follow the VESL Twitter and social media, as you can see right below us. Follow us on social media too. Me at Vaudible and Zephyr at ZephyrCast. I believe I got that one correct. And also, thank you to the production crew who's been with us